Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the November 6th special meeting of Parksville City Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. So this is kind of a great day for all of us. It's good we get to meet with a lot of our very important and appreciated community organizations. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and visit us here today. So welcome, all of you. We're going to get right to it, folks. We're going to have 8 community presentations today, and I can advise you right now, we have Councillor Wood is online as well. So we have quorum, so we're good to go right now. And we're here to listen to your presentations. And if you have any handouts, if you could just give it to our staff off to the side there, they will make sure that we have it here. If you haven't already, I've got a few here, but I'll look at them as we get each presentation in order here. So if there's nothing further anyone needs to bring up, I will ask for the first presentation. Would be from Parksville Beach Fest Society for an annual funding request, a presentation by Cheryl Dill regarding the annual funding for the Parksville Beach Fest Society. You have 5 minutes, Cheryl, and I'm just trying to figure out, how did you get to be first on the list? Yeah. We won't ask a lot of questions if you got to travel. Yeah, okay, that's great.
Sitting amongst this wonderful group of volunteer organizations and philanthropic group that makes our community so special. So I know that all the work that everybody does in this room is amazing and to be commended. I want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Cheryl Dill. I know all of you, and I'm very grateful to know all of you and be collaborating with you wherever we can. And grateful for Councillor Gower's presence every meeting that we have and his support. And just very grateful for this city, for what you do and what you recognize in terms of volunteerism and the importance of that. Thank you very much for that. I've had the pleasure of being the president for Parksville Beach Festival Society since 2009. And I personally got involved in it because it was something fun to do. And when I moved here, 10 years prior, heard so much about the sand sculpting at the beach and how that needed to transform from a risk management point of view. And we did so in 2000 and incorporated in the year 2000 as a not-for-profit society. So we really took it upon ourselves, and the former volunteers that I speak of worked really hard to set up some risk management and look at event sustainability. So we adjusted our purposes not that long ago when we took on the important role of operating the new Parksville Outdoor Theater and writing a grant for that. But we just adjusted our purposes, and I just want to read that. Our purposes are to enhance community engagement by planning and hosting various events and initiatives in honor of the summer and the seaside. So community engagement is really an important value for our organization. We also exist to showcase artistry and talent from Vancouver Island and beyond, whether that's sand sculpting or the art in the park or on the stage. We also wish to ensure events are family friendly, that they're affordable and inclusive and respectful of the environment. We recognize the value of that jewel right in the center of Parksville called Community Park, and recognize that all the work that the city staff and that you as mayor and councillors do to support that incredible jewel we have. So we want to contribute to that. Also, we want to contribute to the enhancement and sustainability of the park. Well, that's what I just said. I apologize for repeating myself. And then also, where appropriate, we wish to partner with and support other philanthropic, not-for-profit organizations in order to benefit our local community. So I think many folks are aware of the benefits of our event. I just want to talk about a few of those things. I did submit with the application the list of events that we organize every year. Obviously, the sand sculpting is how we originated, and that continues to be a mainstay. For us, it's an international sand sculpting competition. It's one of several sand sculpting competitions around the world, but the main one in Canada, the only one in Canada that lasts 5.5 weeks for an exhibition. And, Race Against the Tides is on CBC as a major feature show because it is such a popular display of artistry. And those sculptors come to us, those ones that were in that show. So we have a lot of great accolades for hosting the nature of the sand sculpting event that we have here. But in hosting that event, along with all the other events that we do, one of the main benefits is community engagement and social sustainability. So we engage over 150 volunteers and attendance of over 115,000 a year to our community. And that 115,000 people that come to our community, yes, it includes some local residents that bring family and friends, but it also includes people from all over the world. And if you ever came to the exhibition, you see the map that displays where people are from when they come to visit. So we're really proud of that. And that is a boost of community pride for this community. We do benefit the surrounding areas, but as local residents, I think many people, yes, they have to put up with a little bit more busy nature in Parksville for many reasons, but I think individuals are incredibly proud of this hallmark event, and many people are part of it. As well, it's a celebration of art and it inspires interest. Is that my time?
It's okay. Yeah.
Okay, I'll quickly wrap up. So the donation component that we returned to the community this year, we gave them the maximum. We were just over 80,000 back to not-for-profit groups. So we're a pay-it-forward organization. We bring money in and we distribute funds and we ensure that our event is sustainable. We're focused on taking donations at the gate so that we can make it family friendly and affordable. That's really important to us. And in order to do that, we need about 20% of sponsorship funds to come in for our budget. Our budget is about 550,000 just for sand sculpting. And so we look for just over 100,000 in sponsorships. And that's really essential to us delivering the event. And that's what we're here for today is our grant and aid is to ask the city of Parksville to contribute towards that. We're asking for $7,500 towards that. And would be most grateful for that as the city of Parksville to recognize our event, to contribute and help us reduce some of the expenses to run the event. We've definitely appreciated the support from the city of Parksville and also the staff. We're happy to collaborate with the staff that serve the park in any way we can. And we're very excited to be working currently on the 2025 events. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Cheryl, and we appreciate that. I just want to point out, besides the paying it forward to the various community organizations that help with the gate at the sand sculpting event. Also, the Beach Fest runs the theater ticket sales and so forth with the help of the McMillan Art Gallery, Jennifer. Anyways, with the sales at the MAC, of course. But anyways, just to let you know, council, that this past year, with an agreement that we have with the society, Beach Fest has contributed $11,900 back to the city of Parksville as our portion of the ticket sales. So that was for this year. So a very successful year for the outdoor theater as well, and very well done, and brought a lot of new people to our community and a lot of people in our community to recognize that the arts and culture are very alive in the city of Parksville. So thank you for your contribution for that. And the contribution obviously helps with a lot of the operation and in-kind expenses put forward by the city of Parksville. So that is much appreciated. So open the floor to questions, council. Councillor Gore, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Cheryl, thank you again. And yourself and the team, as you folks always put in an excellent show for the rest of Parksville, well, the larger community, Canada, and other parts of the world. People come and enjoy this event. I will get specifically into the numbers. I think the council has allocated $5,000 for this event. And for the last 2 years, we supplemented that with $2,500. And at that time, if I remember, the ask was for the sand purchase, correct? Yeah, so.
Yeah.
And now that we're talking about perhaps relocating the site for the sculptures, and I think we talked about making it environmentally friendly and recycling the sand so we don't have to truck it in and out every time. So other than that, is the requirement now just for the operations cost being way higher? If you can speak why more than 5,000 is needed?
Yes, in terms of the sand, for the last few years, we've been able to source the sand locally. And that is just outside of Hilliers. And that in the last 2 years, they've been able to store our sand for us so that we don't have to just leave it behind and start from scratch. The trucking of the sand is also an expense on top of the purchase of the sand. And so that's often one of the things that we look to find sponsorship on as well. But at that time, when we did come forward to the city with that request, we had to pay $16,000 just for the sand alone and then pay for the trucking on top. So that year it cost us, honestly, $30,000 for sand because we had to get it from Campbell River. We couldn't get it locally. So we've been able to reduce expense on the sand side and find a way to, from an environmental point of view, to renew that resource. However, at the same time, that year we had asked, our event expenses were about $350,000. They're $200,000 more now, just in those few years. You're welcome.
Inflation even hits Beach Fest. It's just, yeah, and sand, what hasn't gone up, folks? Tell me that. Thank you, Cheryl. Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to our delegation. Cheryl, I would just like to extend my thanks to your the organization and all that they do. I know that you know that I'm down there often volunteering and enjoying the event with visitors. So it certainly brings a lot. And that hasn't even mentioned the music that goes on throughout those 6 weeks as well. So it's a wonderful event for our city for sure.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Cheryl, for all you do and your team and everything for our city. And I have had a lot of out-of-town family come to the events and the sand sculpture. So it's for sure excellent. Now, this particular year, we're moving locations. What happened to the sand from this year? I'm just curious to know. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we are exploring a potential move. So we're kind of in a research mode there and working with the city staff on exploring what that options looks like. But the current sand, we for the last few years, we've removed it from the sand sculpting site and it goes back to CCR Aggregates where we originally purchased the sand.
Okay.
And we stored it there. They're able to store it at a site where, they can keep as much debris off of it and, just store it safely for us. And then it has to be resifted before it's brought back to us. And we get the sand added too, because we need something like 315 yards of sand every year.
Big, amazing, a lot of work.
It is. It is a lot of work
too. I understand. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
That's looking good. Is there any further questions, council, before we let Cheryl get on the road here? Did you? Okay, thank you. Cheryl, we're good. We have the information we need type of thing for us to do our deliberations anyways. Thank you once again for your presentation and drive safely.
Very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care. Nice to see you again. Council, coming up next is from the Ballenas parent committees. The Ballenas Dry Grad funding request, presentation by Ruby Forster regarding a funding request for the annual Ballenas Secondary School Dry Grad event. Hello, Ruby. Welcome.
Good
And
afternoon,
Yeah,
Mayor.
and thank you for showing up. And I want to just say my appreciation for the fact that you're representing Ballenas at a very early stage. In the past, we had advised, like 2 weeks before graduation was probably not the best time to ask for assistance. You're here nice and early at the proper time. So thank you for your
Well, I-
scheduling. Thank you.
Thank you. I was made aware of that just quite recently, how late they were last year. Good afternoon.
Thank you. If you
Mayor,
could just
and-
get more towards the mic, if you could, Ruby. There you go.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
And esteemed counselors, and of course, our community members. My name is Ruby Forrester, and I am a parent volunteer for this year's Dry Grad at Ballenas. And I'm here to follow up on our grant request or grant application to help with some of the costs for this year's prom. In the past, we have relied on fundraising, the students with their grad fees that they have to pay, and donations to help us with our budget to have a successful prom. We will continue to do that. However, in the last few years, the spending was a little bit over the top, and this year we're hoping to really focus and narrow down the spending so that there is no waste. Last year, the venue, so there are five major areas that we need to budget for. There's the venue and the decorations, food and drink, entertainment. There's the cost for coordinating the whole event, and that includes, sorry, I need my old lady glasses. That includes insurance, storage locker fees for all of the decorations that we need to store prior to getting into the venue to decorate. And there is also prizes and, of course, the entertainment. So last year, we've ran into a lot of issues with waste, and we are not prepared to do that this year. I am new to this prom committee and to this whole process, but have been involved with the setting up and taking down of the event. The venue alone, we haven't secured a venue yet, but in the past they have used the main room here at the center, which is now used for the Boys and Girls Club, and we're limited to the amount of time and space that we can use. So that is kind of our last resort. It is looking to that we will be renting out the Arbutus Meadows once again, as they did last year, and that alone was $3,500. We are asking the council, the city and council, for $2,500 grant to help cover the cost of the venue. Of course, the fundraising that we do will take care of a lot of the other expenses that we are going to have. We plan on, as in the past, using all local businesses and as much as we can. Triple T Party Rentals was instrumental in providing us with the decorations, chairs, tables, etc. This year, we will do things a little bit differently with the food because last year, the kids really didn't want to, they said they wanted to sit down dinner, but at the end of the night, there was a lot of food waste, and it was not good to see. the reason why I'm advocating for this particular group of grads is because if you can think back at 2019 in April, when they all got back from spring break, they were all forced to be out there with Sean and Blaine and do the whole Zoom. I call them our Zoom kids. So they had to deal with that towards the end of 2019. And then they had to start their high school year at Ballenas in grade 8 with masks and all the other COVID mandates that came with it. I would like to celebrate this group of grads in a special way, try to give them something different, something special, to let them know that we made it and they've persevered, and as all other grads. But I feel that this particular group, we would like to do something a little bit more special for them. So hopefully we are counting on the grant that we've applied for from the city and council to help us with these costs. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ruby. Great. You did fine. You did great.
I was
Oh.
voluntold to come here, Mr. Mayor.
You did amazing. So, council, just to reiterate, Ballenas is our only high school we have here in the city of Parksville. Appreciate that. I also want to give a shout out to the Ballenas students that participated in planting, and I got to reach my CAO so I get the numbers right, just recently in the wetlands area. And the number was?
It was 23 students, planted over 300 shrubs and trees, spent most of the day in the wetlands with our staff and Mivies.
Wonderful.
So that was the Ballenas students that did that. 300 trees in the wetlands in a very needed area and so forth. It had to be planted. There are appropriate trees that are in that area, and they're just going to make the wetlands a much more special place and an excellent water aquifer that it's become. So my appreciation to Ballenas and the students that did that. So just a shout out to the Ballenas students for their dedication to their community. And they'll actually see the results of that immediately. And in 20 years, it'll be even better when those trees are in mature stage. So thank you, Ruby. Questions for Ms. Forster now? Go ahead, Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Ruby, for coming. As I mentioned to Ruby when I saw her in the audience, that actually it was on my to-do list was to contact Ballenas and find out what the plans were for Grad this year. A couple of questions I do have. One is how many students are in the graduating class this year? And the second question is for everyone's benefit, are parents or families also paying something to contribute to the costs of putting on this celebration?
Yes, Mary, thanks for that. There are 220 that are projected to graduate. However, that might change. So we are rounding it down to 200. And yes, we have raised the graduation fees. And this last year they raised it by about $100. Sorry. Yeah. And so this year they want to lower it a little bit because there were some families that were not able to cover that. Thankfully, we have a school district that has funds to help families who are not able to cover that cost. So yes, we have raised the grad fees for the students just by a little bit. Not as much as last year. I think it's like last year was $100. This year is $75.
Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I know our mayor mentioned that Ballenas is our only secondary school, although I do want to mention that we have past Woodwind students also in attendance, and some of those, I don't know how many of those students might be graduating, but And I also wonder with the close physical proximity of the campuses, if I may say that, some students may be taking some courses as well at Ballenas, even if they're based at past Woodwinds. I'm not sure of that. Is there any connection there with the plans for the graduation, or is that an entirely separate event, if you know that?
I'm not aware of that. We do have students at Ballenas that are in the Head Start program and that are right. And so they are in the know, and we are very transparent with communicating with them. They're the head of their program and our chair of our prom committee. We contact them to let them know what's happening.
Thank you. And thank you for reminding me that KEEP students may also be in that situation. I wouldn't want to leave any of our graduating students out.
And Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we were sitting here, I was thinking about fundraising, as that's one of the things that I've done in my whole life very diligently. You know, is there an alumni with past students that are graduates from Ballenas? Is there that sort of thing in Ballenas?
Not that I'm aware of, which is a really good idea.
Because, you know, my own eye doctor, it's a PhD. His buddy is a PhD and teaches at University of Victoria. There's got to be a lot of other people out there that are part of Ballenas, their history, and they would be a great source to support the graduates, I would think. You know, like just an idea. I mean, I'm not about to run around getting together because I have a student there, but I just think that's an idea for you to tap on.
I will.
Support
I will
alumni.
pass
Yeah.
that on to our
Get that
fundraising.
established. Because just the other day, I met some more graduates from Ballenas and they live here. You know, they're so happy to be here, right?
Yes.
So, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
We do have a fundraising committee separate from food and drinks and everything else, and I will pass that on to them, that information on. And for the rest of the community, hold on to your bottles because we're coming to get them.
Councillor Gore, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but could you tell me what the budget is for this event?
So in the past years, it was roughly 65,000.
Oh.
They brought it down last year to 55, and we are hoping to come in even lower than that, because we hope to save on the food cost and some of the entertainment the students really can do without. They had a magician last year, and the response was, they're not children, they don't need a magician. And that was one of the bigger expenses for last year's entertainment at prom.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Councillor Grant, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our delegation. Great to see you, Ruby. Thanks for coming out today. I will agree with you about this year being special. I have 2 daughters that are in this year. So yeah, they've been through some challenges with COVID. Great to see that this is a non-inflationary example. But I have a question. Are you planning on also doing fundraising from local businesses in the community?
I can't answer to that because the fundraising group has met already, and we have our meeting on the 13th as a group. So I'm not sure what their plans are, but I will find out for you.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe I'll find out myself if I go to the meeting myself. Thank you.
You good? Okay. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Gore.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. So if the city is able to help you with the venue, let's say if still happens at the Jensen Center, could that then replace the request for 2,500? Would you still need the funds?
Pardon me, sorry.
If the city is able to help you secure the venue at the BGC, I don't know, I'm not promising anything, but would that suffice? Would you still need those $2,500?
Yeah, that would, well, I think with the problem with the Jensen Center is there is a timing issue with when we can come in to set up and when to leave. It doesn't leave us much time. So I think if we can secure Arbutus Meadows first, I think that is where we're going to go, because they are open to us being there 24 hours prior and 24 hours after. Just helps with the logistics of things.
Right, yeah, so the setup is what takes the extra time, and that's been challenging with the Jensen Center, with the BGC group, of course, because it takes a lot of time to set up the venue itself with the decorations and so forth, so I appreciate that. Before you leave, Ruby, in pre-COVID, some of the high schools in the area and so forth, and I'm not sure what Ballenas ever did, they had the opportunity for the grads to have a parade of some sort. You know, I know KSS did it. My grandson graduated a couple years back, and of course I was up watching that up in the town of Qualicum Beach, and it was pretty well received by the grads and so forth, and so that becomes kind of like an in-kind donation. Is there any plans or anything like that? I know COVID put a kibosh on everything, and now we're trying to rebuild with everything. As a parade has been suggested, like in the community park or anything like that. Just like to get a heads up,
Yes.
to know if anything like that is being planned, so that we can contact you and let you know the process of making that happen, is all I'm getting at here.
Yes, that was discussed. And the reason why we didn't put the parade in our budget is because, from my understanding and from what I've heard, it was going to cost a lot of money to secure the streets and to provide security and just the traffic, the flow, somebody to man the traffic. So we decided, you know, we weren't going to fight for the parade. However, the alternative was, and this just came up quite recently, was down at the Parksville Beach there, the promenade, have the students promenade down there prior to going to the venue. So that is something that just came up. So if that idea percolates a bit more and comes into fruition, then I'll let you know. And so we can discuss what needs to be done, whether we need it. I let everybody know it's a public space, so I'm not quite sure what we're allowed and not allowed to do down there.
Yeah, you're suggesting a promenade, actually walking?
Right.
Well,
Yes.
how carbon friendly is that? Yeah, that's a really good sign. So, and that alleviates a lot of other concerns without having to produce a traffic management plan, which is costly. And so that's probably not a bad idea, and I can work with staff anyways to see what the considerations of that are, and I'll get back to you on that.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mayor.
yeah, that's, I just want like to get a heads up to what's coming up. Well, once again, any further questions for Ms. Forster while she's here? Okay, that's great, Ruby.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for
Thank
your
you
time.
for your time.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay,
Enjoy the rest of your day.
yeah, thank you. So the next presentation we have today is from the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere region, the Brant Wildlife Festival. A presentation by M. Fraser, yeah, thank you, of the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Region Research Institute regarding the annual funding for the Brant Wildlife Festival. You have approximately 5 minutes if you could, that'd be great. Welcome, and thanks for taking time out of your day. You're good. Green lights go.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Mandy Fraser. I'm the Governance Officer for the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Region and the primary organizer for the Brant Wildlife Festival. So as you know, we recently took over the Brant Wildlife Festival with our first event occurring April 5th through 8th, 2024. We were able to offer 25 events in our first year in this compact 4-day festival, and overall response was very positive in condensing to those 4 days. We did have a few bonus events outside of that window, but overall it was very successful. We had over 2,500 participants and raised roughly $20,000 in sponsorships. In addition to that, we were able to implement 2 brand new events, the Nature Photography Contest and the Passport Program, which was an incentive for folks to support local businesses while they were participating in the festival. Now, looking ahead to 2025, we would like to increase the number of events to closer to 30, again, using the compact 4-day festival dates. So that'll be April 4th through 7th, 2025. And with the increased number of events, we hope that will also increase participation to closer to 3,000. In addition to the 2 events we implemented this year, we would like to further add events, including a speaker series, a nature appreciation day, and a movie night or short film festival. We were really honored to have such immense support during the 2024 festival from funders, sponsors, prize donors, event organizers, marketing partners, as well as the businesses that participated in the passport program. Again, moving forward, we anticipate this list will grow. So new for 2025, as I mentioned, the speaker series. This will look like a series of short presentations focusing on various topics of nature, whether that be research, stewardship, conservation, things like that. The Nature Appreciation Day we would like to host in Parksville. It's still early days in planning, but essentially we've identified this sort of event as missing, one where all participants can join in one location and have this be a really inclusive event for families and something for everyone, whereas the events currently have maximum sizes of attendees and things like that. So one really large celebration. And then the movie night or short film festival, as I mentioned. We are also going to be generating a general volunteer group for volunteers who may not already be affiliated with a local organization. So again, just creating more opportunities for local residents and volunteers to be involved. Last year, our passport program only ran for the 4 days of the festival, and we would like to expand that to at least a week this year to encourage more visitors to visit those local businesses. Some businesses were closed 2 out of the 4 days, so it just wasn't really enough time for people to spend their dollars locally there. Benefits to Parksville is increased visitation and regional economic benefit, celebrating Parksville's natural spaces and unique biodiversity, opportunities to promote those local businesses and encourage participants to spend their dollars locally. It's an accessible event for all community members and very inclusive. It engages youth in conservation and stewardship work. And it also offers the ongoing beneficial relationship between the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere region and the city of Parksville. So for 2025, we have 5 sponsorship tiers ranging from $500 to $5,000. Marketing benefits include recognition on social media, our website, on the sponsor board at various events, and in a thank you feature in the PQB News. So for this year, our budget is looking at around $35,000, and the bulk of this will be raised through those sponsorship tiers that I mentioned. So our ask for today is we are hopeful that the City of Parksville will continue to sponsor the festival at $5,000 annually, just as we received last year. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to present, and I welcome any questions.
That's great, Mandy. Thanks very much for your presentation. Well done. And I also appreciate the fact that you had some learning experiences from last year on how to make it more successful, like with your opening times and extending it. So for your passport, great idea. You're constantly learning and improving. And so that's great to see an association doing that, following up from the year's successes and failures and so forth. And so thanks for looking into that. I have one really important question. Being an old guy, I've seen quite a few Brant festivals, and early times there used to be a large costume, and I think it was Lucy the Goose. I'm just wondering if you inherited the costume, and because that was just really the highlight, to watch Lucy the Goose walking down the boardwalk anyways, and not probably for the person inside the costume, but for the people watching was quite exciting. So just wondering if that's still a feature of the Brant Festival.
Thank you for the question, Mayor. We have located Lucy the Goose. She's currently in storage in our new office space in Qualicum Beach. And she did make a debut last year during one of our BioBlitz events. We are hoping to make some modifications moving forward as there's a bit of a visibility issue for whoever is wearing the mascot costume. So yes, Lucy will be resurfacing.
Wow, I'm impressed already. Yeah. When they go to choosing who's inside, I suggest you call in sick that day, you know, when they make that decision.
I will
Anyways.
absolutely be sick that day.
Good idea. Thank you so much. Council, questions for Mandy at this time? Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mandy, I appreciate the presentation. It's excellent. And I know it was a learning curve last year. Do you have any sense about how many people come, like from out of town? Do you know numbers?
Thank you for the question. We are hoping to implement something this year to account for those that are traveling from out of town.
Okay.
At the moment, we just have our numbers split up into volunteers and attendees, but not the location that they came in from.
Right.
So we hope to do that, but at this point, I don't have those stats.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Grant, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to our delegation. Thanks for your great work yesterday. It was fun to participate in that last year. I said yesterday, last year. Yeah, this year, technically. It's been a long night for many of us. Can you speak a little bit about how you're able to encourage volunteerism through this event and get people plugged into other local groups that do the great work in the community around the Biosphere?
Yes, thank you for the question. So most of the events are actually put on by local volunteer groups, or not necessarily volunteer groups, but Aerosmith naturalists, MIVs, stream keepers, organizations like that. So they are donating their time in kind to ensure that these events can happen for the community. And then just throughout the process last year, I had several people reaching out to me asking if they could volunteer for general activities, like just signing people into events or making sure people have signed waivers, taking pictures, anything really. And we hadn't had anything in place, like a general mailing list for those volunteer opportunities. So we hope to implement that this year. But honestly, it really hasn't been a lot of work for us to get volunteers because people are just so supportive and enthusiastic that they're coming to us and letting us know that they're willing to help with everything. So our first official planning meeting for 2025 is happening on Friday. And all of those event organizers are donating their time to be there and to brainstorm ways that we can make the festival more efficient moving forward, and making sure that we have considered any potential hiccups and making sure we're moving forward in the right direction.
Follow up, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. That's great, because between your group now taking over this event and having a facility now, like an office in Qualcomm Beach, I think it's a great opportunity to kind of grow the work that you're doing as sort of, and bringing more attention to the Biosphere. So yeah, thank you for that.
Councillor Bill, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for the presentation. I'd just like to mention how the fact that it's wonderful to have a shoulder season activity as well, you know, something that draws both locals out of our houses and into the woods and along the streams, but also visitors to come to the area. And I just think that's really nice to notice. We get a lot of visitors, of course, in the summertime, but great to have this sort of warm up to the warmer season, as well as the value around concentrating on focusing on the environment. And of course, I realize that Mabry it's the full environment, including the human element and how we live in this beautiful area. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for all the work that you folks do. If you can tell me a little bit about Mabry, this event taking on, and what different natural areas of Mabry, the Biosphere region, are you able to showcase during those 4-day event? I understand it's mostly the beach where the migration happens, but are there other natural areas that even the locals might not be aware of, are made aware through this festival? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. So yes, the Brant are generally on the beaches, and part of the festival does include bird watching and Brant counts, and there's a Brant in the Bay that focuses on that. But there's a lot of nature tours that we offer. So one tour is put on by Tom Whitfield of Heritage Forest. And Tom is an excellent presenter, and you may have walked the trails of Heritage Forest 100 times and not notice things that Tom would tell you in a presentation or in a tour through the forest. So I think it gives local residents maybe a different lens viewing those natural areas. And then other examples are tours of the French Creek Estuary Nature Preserve by Denise Foster. So again, just a really great informative session, learning about the land there. And then the Englishman River Estuary, so the Nature Trust of British Columbia has also done tours of that natural space. And again, moving forward, we hope to offer more of those.
Thank you. Any further questions? That's great, Mandy. It looks like you've answered all the questions. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll get back to you as quick as we possibly can. A few applications, as you noticed. Anyways, but thank you very much for all that you do for the community.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mandy. Folks, we have the community organization by the next presentation would be the Oceanside Community Arts Council regarding annual funding and additional funding request. A presentation by Jennifer Bate of the Oceanside Community Arts Council regarding their annual grant funding and request for an additional grant for an accessibility and safety projects. I'm pretty sure you're not Jennifer, so I'll pretty sure. That's okay. No, that's great. I see Jennifer in the audience. Anyways, you can't get away. We know you're here. If you could introduce yourself, please, sir. And
good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Stuart Clark, and I'm the president of the Oceanside Community Arts Council. And I'm joined today in making the presentation by our treasurer and board member, John Waring, our secretary and board member beside me, Laurel Kajela, and of course, who will be occupying this chair very briefly, our executive director, Jennifer Bate. I'll take just a few minutes, first of all, to thank you, the Parksville Council, for your endearing support over the years to arts in Parksville and area, and in particular to the OCAC and our Center of Operations, the McMillan Arts Center. We couldn't do what we do without your help and support. And I'd like to just acknowledge particularly the Councillor Mary Beal and your liaison to our council, and acknowledge the support and guidance she provides. It's very valuable and we really appreciate it. So thank you very much for your support over the years. And I'm going to quickly vacate this chair and ask Jennifer Bate to come up and take over the presentation.
thanks, Stuart. Pretty close. That looks like Jennifer.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to come here, Mayor and Council. I'm just going to read right through as Laurel goes through with our production here for you today. We have, yes, applied for our annual grant in the amount of $5,000. Thank you for that support. This grant goes towards covering operations funding. In addition to our MAC School for the Creative Arts, the MAC is used by many local community groups, including Mid-Island Elder College and Oceanside Hospice. The OCAC relies heavily on our vital volunteer base and is now looking at increased capital repairs to our heritage school building, which was built in 1913. The OCAC and Inclusion Parksville have owned and operated the MAC since 1986. We've also submitted an additional funding request in the amount of $9,300 for our accessibility and safety project. The MAC has only one main entrance at the upper level. Critical repairs are needed for our entrance ramp, as well as installation of an independent handicapped entrance, hardware updating our parking lot area for clear designation of safe areas for parking, including handicap parking and pedestrian zones. And also, we are hoping to be able to install an AED device in the building. All of these will improve safety for our visitors to the MAC and falls in line with our emergency preparedness plan. Who are we? Oceanside has a healthy and robust artistic community. The MAC supports and encourages artists and musicians to showcase and share their abilities, to create opportunities for our wider community to positive arts and cultural experiences. Through multiple exhibits in our 4 galleries, visitors to the MAC are able to enjoy art and learn about art and support our artists. Our summer exhibitions alone welcome over 7,000 visitors to the MAC each year. 3 new exhibits every month create opportunities for our artists. These are painters and potters and carvers and sculptors and textile artists and weavers and spinners and photographers and more to showcase and sell their work through the MAC. Manned by over 50 wonderful volunteers, the MAC gift shop alone now represents over 180 local artists. And just a reminder that Christmas is just around the corner. Arts education is an integral component of the MAC, where we create safe and encouraging classes to support learning opportunities for residents and visitors to Oceanside. The MAC School for Creative Arts began in 2018, growing from one Sunday morning art class program to multiple streams now for adults, children, and youth, and free programs for seniors, and through our art therapy program, all of our participants. Our popular Aging Artfully program at the MAC, which we just recently celebrated the 103rd birthday of one of our participants in Aging Artfully. We also offer a seniors art program in our community, running free art classes to 6 local senior residences in Oceanside. Our volunteers help in our gift shop. They help for Family Day programming, BC Culture Days, box office support for local events, and more. The Arts Council now has over 750 members. These are residents who support the arts and culture program locally, and we keep them connected through a monthly newsletter. Recently, thanks to a generous donation of mosaic materials, we were able to partner with School District 69 to create a free mosaics project at Pass Woodwind School, where students designed and created a wonderful collaborative piece of art, which is now hanging in their entranceway. Our art banner crawl is a terrific project for BC Culture Days. We are partnering with the City of Parksville and Parksville Downtown Business Association. We've created a fun treasure hunt, encouraging visitors to walk the downtown area as they search for the colorful art banners installed throughout the area. This is a year-round fun event for Parksville. In addition, music concerts and events take place at the MAC. The concert gallery is used for rehearsals, concerts, choirs, piano recitals, elder college programming, and much more. We are excited that our satellite gallery at the Bayside Oceanfront Resort now has local artwork in all of their public areas, rooms at the resorts. The Bayside is a great partner and supports the arts with the Macmillan Arts Centre. The OCAC and Inclusion Parksville are co-owners of the MAC and fully support the vital work of the PQB Fruit Tree Foundation, who transformed an unused section of land directly beside the MAC building to create an urban art and garden space. This unique and important MAC community art garden addresses the food security worries that we are all facing today. Everything that is grown in the garden is given away. To date, over 3,000 pounds of food has been donated out of the garden. Classes for hydroponics, soil health are being developed by the garden. Our creative kids and our art therapy programs also take place in the garden. Inclusion Parksville is also running healthy growing programs for the garden, and one of their locals is always playing the piano, and you can look for Scott when you go and visit. The OCAC and the MAC impacts many people, not just artists, but our Oceanside community and the many visitors to the area. We thank the City of Parksville for their continuing support of the Oceanside Community Arts Council and the Macmillan Arts Center. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer and Laura as well. Great job on the slides. Right on. I gotta say, Jennifer and all that, like I've visited the MAC during the summer season, fall season anyways, and the project that Jennifer's explained today about the garden that they have adjacent in between the MAC and the inclusion building out the back is an absolutely phenomenal space. It's so impressive. You simply have to see it to believe it. That they've created in the hub of the city, a garden producing so much vegetables and fruit and so forth that is given away to our community. And their production is huge. It's the envy of any gardener. I mean, the greenhouse is absolutely beautiful. They have a sculpture, I believe it's called a sculpture, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah. The artist, again, the sculpture.
Sheena McCorkadale.
Right, Sheena McCorkadale anyways. You may have seen some of her work anyways, heading out to Bowser anyways, up in Qualicum Bay, I believe it is. Beautiful, very whimsical, whimsy. It's just an amazing sculpture they have in this garden. So as you can see, I'm kind of impressed with it. But I encourage everyone to at least have a look at it. Like, it looks great now, but it looks even great when the garden is blooming and so forth. And I know that the community is taking advantage of it in a big way. So right off, thank you so much for that project. It's such an important part of our community. You also occupy one of the few heritage buildings we have in Parksville, of which I'm also very appreciative of as well. And I understand your ask is looking for help at making that a little more accessible, which ticks off a couple boxes with us right away and trying to be as accessible as we can as a community. So I appreciate that. The question I have just quickly, your banner program, you mentioned anyways, 12 or 14 banners anyways.
Yes.
Just a question, are they mounted on the light standards, or are they just throughout businesses through the?
No, they are mounted on light standards throughout the downtown business area. Yeah.
Okay. Is this a new program, Jennifer? Did it
I
happen
believe the first art banners, I'm going to ask Eva, maybe 3 years ago, we started putting art banners up on the city light standards, and we've added to that amount every year through our BC Cultures program, Culture Days program.
I love that. And I love the fact that
You've got one right outside the front here.
Yeah, the local artists, is just, it's so big anyways here that's appreciating and showing off what our community can produce. So thank you for everything so far. That answers all my questions. Questions from council. Councilor Dorr, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer, for the presentation. So for the $9,300 that you're requesting for accessibility upgrades, have you looked at Spark BC funding? Because that's a provincial government plan that is specifically for accessibility stuff. And also for the AED, I don't know if you looked at the Heart and Stroke Foundation. I think they are providing AEDs to nonprofit groups as well. So if you can speak to that a little bit. And also, on the other hand, the importance of these grants and the aids that you receive, not just from the city, but other sources, how does that help MAC in making sure the programs and the classes that you offer are affordable for our people in the Oceanside? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gar. We are exploring the Spark BC program, the Heart and Stroke Foundation, as well as the RDN Safety Project. So we're hoping to be able to offset some of the costs through those grant funding opportunities as well. We do have a quote for the accessibility hardware for the front door. That came from the same company that did the City of Parksville buildings, I believe. That's come in at $4,000. Updating and managing the painting of our parking lot is also super important. There is no lines on the parking lot right now. It's been a long time since we've addressed this issue. So Because the MAC is a lot busier, we share that parking lot with Inclusion Parksville. Handicapped spots are not delineated, and so it's a very busy spot, and it would really, really help finding also areas where the pedestrians that walk through the parking lot know the safe areas that they can get in and out of the building. Improving our MAC entrance ramp, as I mentioned, it is our front door. It's our only access to that building. And because it's on a ramp, we have to be very careful in the winter months for the non-slip surface that needs to be applied. Every year we reapply it, and every year it gets rubbed off. And certainly when you're clearing snow off of that front ramp, it doesn't last long. This year we hope to address that in a much more permanent fashion. So we've got somebody that's going to look at that, putting a little bit more of a safety access ramp there. So that's what all this is about, is to increase accessibility. We do not have a handicap button on the front door, so anyone that comes in that needs help with a walker or a wheelchair, they knock on the window and we open the door. That would be a huge win for us to be able to provide that. So yeah, that's what this is all about. It's a small part of a larger conversation that we're now having with our heritage building. We did recently, with Inclusion Parksville, have an assessment done of our building. We're looking at major expenses coming up over the next several years. Replacement of windows, the building needs to be painted, the roof needs to be replaced. So believe me, this is a small part of what we're looking at having to do over the next several years. So this is the first step. Making programs more affordable. Right now, we actually have many free programs at the MAC, geared towards mostly our seniors population, as well as our drop-in free art therapy programs. Art therapy sort of grew into its own during COVID, when, of course, our building was closed for 3 months. We ended up pivoting with the help of the BC Arts Council to be able to provide art therapy programs online through our Zoom program, and we pivoted our teaching classroom to go online. We try to keep all of our programs affordable, and of course, the organizations that rent the MAC pay a very, very nominal fee to use our galleries and our studio after hours. So I think that we're very reasonable, and I think that we're very supportive. Many new programs don't pay to use the building as they try to build their programs as well. So,
Thank you. Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Jennifer and Laurel, for the presentation. I'd like to pick up on Councillor Gore's last question. Although there may be a nominal fee for classes, I do note that anyone visiting the space is certainly welcome and perhaps encouraged to make a donation, but it's not actually required. So, and that in and of itself is of great value to our locals as well as visitors coming to the area. I also do appreciate, and I hadn't really thought about this too much before, but the MAC and the OCAC offering the MAC is one of, if not, is one of the very few places that one can go and visit indoors in our city year round. So in the winter, the museum has been able to extend some of their time so that they can go, I believe, until the end of the year. But during the winter months, there is nowhere else except the library as well that you can go and feel like you're getting out of the house, you're getting out somewhere. Sometimes the weather is somewhat inclement, but one can go for that bright color that you get at the art gallery. So I really do appreciate that. I'm just wondering, I appreciate that you're going to continue looking at grant opportunities, and it's nice to hear about Spark and the Heart and Stroke Foundation in particular. I am wondering if you have a priority, if for instance, council is not able to assist with, let's say, all of this, hopefully there's something we can do, but is there a priority of the safety and accessibility items that you're hoping to have included?
thank you, Councillor Beal. If I was to choose the top two of the four, it's that accessibility to our front door. it would be the MAC ramp, I think, to make it safe and for everybody that comes in and out, and that accessibility hardware for our handicapped entrance. I think that addresses concerns for a lot of the visitors that we see in the summertime now, as well as, of course, all of our participants in our art classes and those that come to the concerts. So if I was to have to give that a thought, I would say, please, accessibility hardware for our front door and help to make our entrance ramp more safe.
Thank you. Any other questions? Looks like it. That's great, Jennifer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Jennifer,
much.
Laurel, and Stuart. Thank you for your
Thank
presentation.
you for your time.
Yes, thanks very much. And great. And just in case you're wondering, folks, we are having roofers up on the roof up there. It's not rodents or really big raccoons. So it's the roofers, and they're a lot quieter than they have been in the past. So far, so good. I won't jinx us though by waiting for the next piece of equipment to start up. So next up, we have the presentation by the Parksville District Historical Society, the annual funding increase request. Presentation by John Walters, anyways, of the Parksville District Historical Society regarding a request for increased annual grant funding, also known as the Parksville Museum.
That's right. And good to be with you, your worship and council.
Yeah, thanks.
First time on this side of the table. I have to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, thank you, John, for attending. So everybody, this is John Walters. So John, take it away. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you. With a lot to say, I'll try to compress my presentation today. Great to be with you and to be with so many other laudable community groups. Our situation is one of kind of viability at this point. Not what we can do this year, but whether or not we're going to sustain ourselves as a museum and as a historical society. We're really down to that level. You have not seen us for a number of years coming here with these other groups because we haven't had to. We have been the beneficiary of what I call the angel investment in the museum, the Craig Endowment. And from that, we could draw down our operational deficits when they occurred without having to bother other groups too much about that. We could meet those internally, but that's a number of years. And I'm here to give you the news now, though, that those budgets now are coming to a rapid conclusion. Our unrestricted funds at the museum now are such that we are not sustainable into anything like the midterm. So to that extent, were I to be in your shoes, I would want to know what else are we doing to raise money. And I've given you a handout of our major funding source, which is our grant and aid applications for everywhere, which I consider to be a robust, if not professional, effort at seeking funds from various organizations. It's something that we have to do every year, notwithstanding the amount of rejections we get. We persevere with that, and yet it is not enough. We're very proud of the museum grounds, one of the most nicely manicured, landscaped sanctuaries in this city, a bit of a hidden gem. And we like people coming there. We like them coming there also, though, to achieve some revenue by having weddings there, by having events there, and by having our music program there. And still, that's not enough. On the expense side this year, we have compressed everything. The hours that were open in a day, the days that were open in the week, and the season itself, all compressed in the effort to save costs. And to try to meet something like a sustainable budget. And it's just not there. I was here a few months ago when you were having your deliberations about the water tower, and there was a lot of very positive sentiments expressed about history and about heritage properties. And to quote your worship, I think almost directly, there is a regrettable lack of heritage properties in the city of Parksville. Councillor Gurr said, I think it was 2 reallys, it might have been 3. I really, really like history and other sentiments around the table. And I was very encouraged by that. But I guess like the politician said, though, if you actually want to know what people support and what they really value and will contribute to, look at their budgets. And to that end, I just wanted to do a very brief comparison of the Parksville's historic contribution to the museum compared to some of the other municipalities. something like the exercise that you do with, say, senior staff salaries. You're not doing that in a vacuum. You're looking at surveys of the province and the island and your neighbors, and you want to be in that kind of what I would call the window of defensibility. That is below which you might not retain staff and you might have labor problems, and above that you might be accused of squandering taxpayers' money. So you want to kind of be in that defensible window there. Well, then to a brief comparison of just your neighbors and the contribution that comes to the museum. On a per capita basis, Nanaimo gives about $4.05 for every person in Nanaimo to their museum as an operational line item in their budget, not a grant and aid. The contribution of $38,260 by the Village of Cumberland last year represented $7.97 for every person in Cumberland. To our immediate neighbor and partner in just about everything, Qualicum Beach. Last year, their $115,000 represented $12.10 for every person in Qualicum. Parksville's consistent and traditional contribution of $5,000 to the museum represents 37 cents per person. That's not 30% less than Qualicum Beach. That's 30 times less than Qualicum Beach. Again, with our history of the endowment, we haven't had to point these things out too much, and maybe out of sight, out of mind. But that reality is now changing. The $25,000 that we're asking for from the 5 this year sounds like a lot. It would be $1.74 for every person in Parksville, which would still be just over a third of your least contributing municipality around you, which would be Nanaimo. But that is not going to staunch the bleeding of our deficit. That might buy the bandages and some sutures for the patient, but it's not going to stop it. So what's really going to be required, unless there's some other major donation, which we keep trying for, is going to be, I think, just a different view of the museum, consistent with how museums are treated by almost all other municipalities, and that is as an institution and as an asset. Treated with the same kind of maintenance and deference that you would for just, say, your buildings in your public parks. No different than that. It will require a different policy and a different kind of shift in the thinking of how the museums go forward. My time is up, and I don't want to trespass upon the time of these other worthy groups that are here, but let me just put it this way. We are here to tell the stories of the people that came before us and to celebrate their achievements. And we do it out of a sense of gratitude. We think it's an expression of gratitude for the people who built this city. We tell their stories. Everything that we do, from planning and decision-making to community festivals, are all built on the efforts of the people who came together, like-minded people who just came together to do things that were worthy of building a community. We just hope that the city of Parksville now, in this new reality of funding requirements, joins us in that expression of gratitude to the people on whose shoulders we stand. And with that, I'll take any questions that council might have.
Thank you, John, for your presentation. That's great. Just a couple of questions. I have the background information here. Just first up, you're requesting 25,000.
That's correct. That would be for this year.
Yeah.
Our ongoing request would be for it to meet just the minimum amounts of Nanaimo's in next year's budget, which would be under their cap of $4 per person. That would just get us to break even, not increasing the season, not doing any history or projects. If I could just interject here, it's the 100th anniversary of the United Church coming up this year. St. Mary's was the reason, the pioneer St. Mary's Church is why that site is there. We would like to participate in Robust. That's going to take some money. We're not budgeting for anything like that. We're just talking about keeping the site open so that it doesn't become an increasing security risk, if nothing else, to your high-end resort properties across the street and possibly new multifamily right across the street. We're a site. We're not just one history building like so many other places. We're a site, and that is becoming more of a security risk the more compressed that schedule gets to be. So this year we are asking just for that transitional funding, but that would be in preparation for next year's request for something like the bare minimum of the average, like the bottom end of that band I was talking about, compared to other municipalities around you.
Sorry, John, I don't have my calculator. Give me that number, buddy. You know, moving on, 25,000 up front now.
Yeah.
And what would you be expecting to maintain?
Somewhere in the magnitude of, and an operational level too, just as important, that would be 65,000 for next year, which again would be at the very, very bottom end of everything else it is doing, the municipalities around you, what they're funding to that level. That again, just to break even
So you're
operationally.
suggesting 25,000.
25,000 this year.
65,000 next year.
We think with we're going business to business now, currently, and we're hoping that we can stay open long enough this year to get to next year. Really is the purpose of that money.
Wow. Okay. So I'm assuming now your endowment is now depleted? Or
The unrestricted amounts in that are just about gone.
Right.
Down to, I think, very little amounts of money. We do have restricted funds, externally restricted for specific projects. We have to spend them on those things like
Right.
stairs or something.
Right.
Internally restricted, we have to have enough money to go after the gaming revenues and the matching funds that are available to us. If we draw down that money, we can't go after those other monies. And we're really just like selling an asset and calling it income. We're just biding our time until there is no money at all for any other purpose. So we can't get those matching monies.
Okay, so the $25,000 that we're looking at for right now, right here, is going to operating costs. Is that going to wages? Is that going to salaries? Is it going to?
It would go to the general our operating budget is about 165,000 and our monies right now are available in our budget is about 105. So the deficit is about $60,000.
Okay, so your operating budget right now is 165?
About that.
Okay.
Expenses, yeah.
Great, I think that's. Okay, and then you have your very successful music series. You know,
It was.
I partook of quite a few concerts and very enjoyable. So you have revenue. I'm assuming that's not a community benefit only. It's actually a revenue source, I would hope. Anyways, and so that's part of your fundraising you do is by putting
Absolutely
on those
the
musical
effort.
events.
The last one we did was the small classical concert. Very well received, but just break even.
Right.
You know, we're trying everything we can while we have access to, say, musicians happen to come up at a rate that we can afford, and we've got some time before the weather hits. Again, to use the site as productively as we can.
Right, and other ones like the John Go-Go and stuff like that, were they?
Yeah, we do make
were
money
they
on
better
those.
than break even?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 4 summer series concerts that we do are better than break even. We
Okay.
do make money on those.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for me, John. Council. Questions? Councilor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, John, for this thorough presentation. As you know, I'm the liaison to for the museum and a great, supporter from all of us here. Is that 25,000 a line item or is that for a grant? I guess the future, is that what you want as a line item? Is that the goal?
It is the goal. I didn't mention this, but one of the problems we have is when we have so little discretionary money and our staff knows it. In the last 3 months of our budget cycle, they know they're going to have to start looking for work because that really is, the cost that we have to keep compressing down. And pretty soon it's not really a job. And so we're right on the knife edge right now of being able to keep anything like the amount of employment we need. I didn't mention also our visitors were up about 15 to 20% this year, notwithstanding the fact that our staff time went down, our visits actually went up. So that's the basic reality. We would like to get it so that at least we can maintain a staff person with all the institutional memory and all the organizing of the volunteers, the hundreds of hours that go into just landscaping that at volunteer time per year requires that organization and that amount of time that we've budgeted for it there. But it does really require something more than just an annual grant and aid aspiration. It has to be a little bit more of a line item if we're going to retain anybody that can do the work.
Right. Are you good? Okay, thank you. Councilor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, John, for your presentation. And I'd just like to add, with those last comments, I don't know if people appreciate that, especially with a largely volunteer organization with maybe one staff member or an additional person in the summer, whatever it is, that so much time has to go to applying for grants. And how do you do that as well as maintain, general operations and try to draw in and create events that draw in further people. So I can appreciate that. And that at a certain point, how do you hold on to staff that has that. And then if you need to, you have to apply for, people have to apply for grants in order to actually stay employed. It just becomes a real vicious circle. So I can appreciate that that's a hard place to be. And yet a museum is absolutely an important part of any community. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just in Revelstoke, and again, they're a community not that much different than ours in size and scale and everything else. They have 2 museums. They have 2 full running museums in the city, and we just want to make sure that we have our one. That's kind of what we're trying to hang on to.
Any other questions, council? I think we've, your hand is up.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Wood.
Thanks, Mayor. Through yourself to John. I'm not sure if you remember, John, but when we spoke about the water tower, obviously I love the idea of keeping the water tower, but paying for things is often the issue. John, you spoke to City of Nanaimo and then Revelstoke, and I believe Cumberland. Is it kind of status quo for local governments, municipalities to have a line item for their museum? Do you have a percentage that does happen? Could you just expand on that a little bit? Thank you.
Don't know the percentage. The Nanaimo's was a line item. The line item that and a maintenance budget for it as well. The Qualicum's was a line item. The Village of Cumberland, the last one I looked at, was a grant and aid. So there's a mix. I don't know the percentage split on that one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wood. You have any question? Yes. Councillor Gore.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you, John. Yes, I do
you.
love history. I do enjoy visiting the museum. My question, sort of information here, but we are looking at about $17 to $18 million in a budget for the city of Parksville. So like you mentioned, we have to be very prudent how we spend that money and where. Do you see the role of the museum perhaps in the future evolve a little bit and have that collaboration perhaps with, let's say, the Arts Council? And could you just work together? Do you see like the role of the museum change and evolve a little bit as the community and the society is changing?
Well, I think all museums are facing the requirement to change. Some of it goes to the technology that people kind of expect graphically, even presenting history and that kind of thing. Maybe not as hands-on and maybe not as archival. So yeah, there's going to be, but the partnerships themselves, again, with the site that we have, a little bit unique in terms of museums, we would be open to any partnership that allowed us to continue to do our core work. You know, and if we have to spend more time on those side roads in order to guarantee that we can do the core work, I consider the core work to actually do the history. And I didn't really mention much about the projects other than the United Church. We would love to do a history of the volunteer fire department. Right now, we have some second generation firefighters from the beginning of the fire department who were serving when the fire hall used to be on 19A that long ago. And so while those resources are still available to us, we would love to do and kind of scheduled a comprehensive history of that. We have no money to do that. You'll see it was one of the grants in aid that was rejected by the province. So to do the actual work of history and that is, it's at this point secondary to just the viability of the site.
Thank you. Any other questions, council? Councillor Grant, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to our delegation also for serving on this side of the table as you did. Maybe building a little bit on Councillor Gore's question, I'll also add that I am also a history buff and currently more Roman history, though, that I've been reading lately. So it goes a little further back, but in terms of the contribution to tourism in Parksville, can you speak a little bit about visitors? You mentioned you're up 10 to 15% this year. Can you speak a little bit about tourism and visitors to our community and the museum's role in that?
Yeah, I think the number was about 5,600 that we actually logged coming in. Also difficult, so many more people visit the site, especially when we're closed because it's an open site. The buildings themselves are closed, but there's still actually a bit of an experience to be had if you just walk around. I mean, it's a great place to just have lunch or whatever, just to kind of hang out for a while. There are placards in front of all of the buildings, which give a little history of what the building. So there is something of an experience to be had when we're not there. So all that being said, the number is much higher than the 5,600. But also just in terms of our location, the resort properties are there. We get a lot of people who go there and there's, maybe not anything really happening at, they don't want to do another mini golf in the area or something. And just they're looking for something a little bit more cultural. It's just a walk down the street and you can visit there. We get a lot of people and we're grateful for our relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. People will go in there and maybe want to stretch their legs a little bit, have been in the car for a while and can come to the site and just get a culture related to the community. Again, with so many newcomers coming to our community, we know there's going to be a lot of them that are going to take some advantage of just getting the context and the experience of this place a little bit, just getting a flavor for what it was like and the past of that, so that they kind of maybe a little bit more quickly become part of the community and feel that way. And straight to the tourist numbers, those would be my major points that I would the immediate resort properties and the relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. Those are the ones that we think of directly and go to directly.
Thank you. Is that about it then, Council? That's great, John. Thanks for your presentation. Thank you so much. So moving right along, we have the next presentation is from the Parksville Curling Club, a request for capital funding support. Presentation by T. Reich, the Parksville Curling Club, requesting support for capital funding. How's that pronunciation? Right?
Thank you.
Am I close on your pronunciation? Right?
So actually, it was remarkably spot on, sir.
Sorry?
Remarkably spot on, sir.
Oh, thank you. Okay, sir, introduce yourself for the rest of us, and you have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, Council, my name is Tony Reich. I'm president of the Parksville Curling Club. I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today. I want to give a special thanks to Keith Martin, your facilities manager, who has turned out to be an exceptional liaison for the city with the curling club. I know time is limited, but I would like to start with a little bit of background and context. Many may not know that the District 69 Arena, which is the home of the Parksville Curling Club, has never actually been or had not been owned by the city of Parksville up until very recently. It's a facility of the RDN. And when they opened their new arena at Oceanside Place, District 69 Arena became available. And at that time, a tripartite lease arrangement was put in place where City of Parksville, the landowner, had an agreement with the regional RDN as the facility owner. And we, after 10 years of hoping for curling in Parksville, finally became the tenant of that arena. That arrangement continued until the former mayor and council acquired the District 69 Arena from the RDN, I believe for the princely sum of $1, but I wasn't there at the time. And we put in place a dual lease arrangement between the City of Parksville, now the land and facility owner, and the Parksville Curling Club as the tenant, creating a very unusual, actually unique situation in the province, as we understand it, where the city is the owner of the land and the building and has no responsibility whatsoever for any of the maintenance of any part of that building. So as the steward of the facility, we have taken on all obligation. Now, today's discussion is not about the lease, but it is about the capital implications of that lease arrangement. Under the current lease, the Parksville Curling Club is not eligible for grant funding from either federal, provincial, or municipal sources. Minimum lease requirement to qualify for grant funds, capital grant funds, that is a 10-year lease. The minimum remaining term to apply for capital grant funding is 5 years. So there was also understanding that under a codicil with the city of Parksville, when they were granted the community park lands, that the city is not able to provide a building lease within the community park for a period longer than 5 years. And that was explained to us by city officials. We may not have that correct. However, more generally, it has become the case that municipalities tend to keep lease terms under 5 years to avoid a deemed ownership challenge from a tenant. The PCC, the Curling Club, is also ineligible for capital grant financing from third-party institutions, banks, lending agencies, et cetera, because we are not an owner of any part of that facility, and therefore we have no equity to put up as collateral. Now, in lieu of ownership, lending institutions may agree to a extended lease, a 10-year term. That's usually the minimum, as long as someone is guaranteeing that lease, which is effectively doing what municipalities have been uncomfortable doing. As a result, over the period from 2003 till today, the Parksville Curling Club membership has put up over $500,000 in hard capital costs to maintain and support this facility, all of which has accrued to District 69 Arena and now to the city of Parksville. So what are we seeking? Well, when we first put this material together and talked to Keith about this presentation, our core ask was a working committee with representatives from the city and from the Parksville Curling Club, negotiating and agreeing some kind of capital financing alternative or strategy that we could embed in our anticipated lease beginning or covering the 2026 to 2030 period. And in the material that I provided to you in advance of this meeting, we laid out a few options for what that might look like. And then if there were any funds available, we had one sort of pressing capital need, which was replacing the rooftop furnace and heater in our concession area, sort of enhancing the curling experience, if you will, for those who are at the club. So what changed? Well, on September 20th, the Technical Safety BC assessment team came in for their annual inspection and noted that our condenser, which has been performing admirably, was nearing its nameplate 20-year life. And under an abundance of caution, which has been the approach since the Fernie disaster, I guess you would call it, when lives were lost in an ammonia leak, the TSBC has instructed the club that the District 69 Arena condenser unit must be replaced before ice is installed next summer. Cost estimate for this condenser provided when I put this material forward for you at $140,000. We have received I got a bit more of a sharpened pencil estimate at $155,000, but you can see the numbers that we're working with. So that's changed our ask somewhat. We still are very much interested, and I think it's important that we work together with the city to develop some kind of a capital financing strategy for the District 69 Arena. It is not a young facility. However, given the issue around the condenser, it may be appropriate to move the discussions around a new lease arrangement as well forward into next year, into 2025, so that these two initiatives, capital financing and a lease extension, sort of come together at the same time, rather than making it outside of that arrangement. Our members, as I mentioned, have paid more than, or have raised more than $500,000 of hard capital dollars over the last 20 years for the club. And we believe with our accumulated capital account since we put our chiller in place in 2019, together with some fundraising initiatives that we're ready to commence, that we can come up with about $65,000 of that condenser cost in the time that is required to do that, which is by next summer. This is the situation we're in, and we're hoping that we can open a dialogue that can lead us to an alternative arrangement that will make operation of the curling club and the District 69 Arena more secure into the long term. So with that, I'll ask for any questions.
Thanks. Terry, right? Terry, not Tony? Terry.
Tony.
Tony, thanks, Tony. The question I have just up front is, yeah, you're being hit with some very high expenses here. No question about it. I was just wondering, has the curling club looked at your building as a possible revenue source for other than curling? Like I understand that there's maybe some pickleballers, they're kind of a new sports group. You may have heard of them. Anyways, it may have used some of your facilities type of that. Is that on a revenue? Is it creating revenue for the curling club? Since you have the annual lease on the building, do you make money off the deal? My friend?
We started pickleball. You're basically speaking of the non-ice part of the year.
That's right. Yes.
So we started an arrangement with the two pickleball societies in Parksville. Not sure why there's two, but for the use of the facility, and they use them during that rainy period when the ice is out. So early April through to the nice days, which is June, July, August. Pickleballers would prefer to play outside. However, we have they've rented facility as well for their equivalent of bonspiels or annual competitions, closing events, larger scale events where there are more players involved, need more courts. We have facilities used through the summer for a number of activities, celebration of life activities. We had a market very recently. All of these are done on a rental basis. So we have a rental arrangement. You can rent the facility itself, just the concession plus kitchen, depending on the needs of the individual. So we proactively source these activities through each summer. They're part of our revenue that we raise to manage an operating budget that is about $355,000 a year.
Wow. Yeah, I was thinking more like a regular occurrence in your off ice season, like a farmer's market, occurring, in the curling club or something like that, as a weekly basis or something like that. It's nice to have farmers markets outside, but it's even nicer when it's raining to have them inside. And I've been in your facility. We used to use it through Special Olympics. Thank you. And it's a pretty large facility, and I appreciate all the washrooms and everything else that you have already in board. I just trying to think of revenue sources here that may be applicable here. Okay, Council, I heard a couple questions here as to issuing of a 10-year lease term as compared to, the annual lease term. There's some indication that you may apply, you may be more, have more grants available if you go to a 10-year lease or a 5-year lease. Is that correct? Or?
A 10-year lease would allow us to apply for capital grants. Right now, we can apply for operating grants, which we pursue vigorously to help with our operation expenses. But with a 5-year lease, we are never eligible for capital grant financing, federal, provincial, or municipal. The term is simply too short for capital. 10-year lease would give us, would put us into the window where we could apply. Because again, 10-year lease is the minimum, with 5 years being the minimum left on the lease at which you can actually apply for capital financing or capital funding. That 10-year lease would then have to be backed. For example, it would have to be a structured 10-year lease with the city of Parksville, for example, or the city of Parksville putting their hand over their heart or whatever document would be required to effectively do the same thing. That would be the minimum.
Okay, that's my first question. And the other thing is, have you looked at, or do you currently receive any funding from RDN Recreation?
Again, we have looked at, we've looked at RDN Recreation for operating support and for smaller projects, for example, equipment for juniors, equipment for Special Olympics activities, enhancing our concession area viewing for off-ice viewing of events on ice, that sort of thing. And we've been quite successful at applications. There are very few things to do in the Oceanside area in the winter, and we find we get a very positive reception when we do pursue operational type grants and funding supports. It's the capital side that, again, because we have no ownership of the building, and it makes it impossible. We're stuck. Yeah.
You don't have the collateral.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, Council, go ahead. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tony, thanks for coming today. I do want to celebrate the great group you have over there. Very resourceful folks who put a lot of creativity to keeping that ice in tip-top shape. I've heard stories about stringing sheets along to soak up the ice when the season comes to an end, and magroubering the ice making facility there as well. So yeah, great work on that. And also I see there's advertising, like you've done lots of things to get revenue in. Have you had any conversations yet so far with city staff around the lease aspect of this? I'm just not sure where we're at in terms of that, or is this sort of new information?
Our lease will expire in December, end of December 2025. So we've put a committee together at the club, an advisory committee of sort of senior gray hair. Well, we're all gray hairs. People with long histories with the club to start putting together a negotiating position around that lease. And we would expect, again, depending on how the city would like to proceed, we would expect that sometime early in 2025, we were going to be approaching at city administration to open discussions around that lease.
This thing first, then.
Yeah, we will check into that. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Councilor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much for the presentation, even though I've got to admit that some of this is quite alarming. Big figures, and I gather for you as well, the news that this has to be done sooner and not really a lot of choice. So it is open this season though, is that correct? The curling club is in operation, is it right now or soon or?
Oh, it is. I mean, the facility
what I
that we're
thought.
being asked to replace is operating without fault. So
Yeah.
the ice is in, our year is underway, all our bond spills are moving forward. The ice will be taken out early in April.
Okay.
And then we'll have our dry
you.
season.
And can you tell me how many active members you have in the club?
Sure. I provided a bit of a data sheet in the material that I provided to you, but we have 752 current members.
Okay.
We have 331 active curlers. So those are individuals who are curling in leagues right now, and they represent 750 league curlers. So basically every curler's in it, on average, two plus leagues. We've had 430 new members join the club since 2020. So look at that as the COVID cutoff time. And we were closed for 2 years during COVID. So there's interest continues in the sport of curling as the community expands. And we've certainly been very encouraged to see that. At the same time, many of our members moved away during COVID, and many of them didn't come back after COVID. It was just too much. It's a big social sport, and not for everyone if you're concerned perhaps that proximity is going to be an issue. So we're still in recovery, as I guess everyone else is from that event.
Thank you. And I would like to compliment you as well. I hear some very good things about the ice in Parksville. I'm not a curler myself. Some people have seen me in action, and believe me, they don't ever want to see me there again. You laugh. It was pretty bad. But I did have another question, sorry. So that's fantastic about that. And I guess we'll have to see what can be done. I don't know going forward, but thank you very much from my end for bringing this information to us. By the way, Grad is looking for a place for their, I don't know if they booked Arbutus Meadows yet, but just putting that out there.
Not sure you want to party on concrete, but it's a possibility. We do have, just to follow up on your observation, the Parksville Curling Club and our District 69 arena is the only arena ice on the island. And we are by far the best ice surface. So professionals love to come here. I was just telling Councillor Martin that Curl BC has just approached us to put on the Curl BC Masters in February of 2026. So that'll be our next sort of sanctioned Curl BC or Curl Canada event. And we've done a number of them over the years for that reason. It's just not only is it a beautiful town, a beautiful setting, but it's a great ice surface to play on.
Go ahead, Councillor Beal.
Thank you very much. I was wondering if you have any information about other municipalities, other towns, other cities where the municipality owns the building, or what kind of an arrangement is in place there, or how this, I mean, I understand it's somewhat unique, but Yes, if there's anything you can tell us about perhaps even similar size communities, but what other arrangements are out there with
Sure.
cities? Thank you.
They range quite a bit, and we're in the process now of pulling together basically a complete inventory for the province. I think it'll be useful in the lease discussions, but nearby examples, Nanaimo Curling Club is owned by the city of Nanaimo, and they take full responsibility for anything outside of the club. So they had, for example, a rooftop condenser. When their condenser needed replacement, they paid for it immediately. Ours sits outside the building, neither here nor there. There's arrangement with the club is that anything inside of that, so inside the walls, if you will, is the responsibility of the curling club. When they're needed to replace their chiller in the last year, the curling club, I believe, came up with $88,000, ready 5, and the city made up the remainder because they want to have curling in Nanaimo. Qualicum has a more structured arrangement. Qualicum Town Council, they own the building and it's part of the convention center attached. They pay for all of the capital involved with that building. And then the two parties, the curling club and the town, put a set aside amount of funds each year for shared 50-50 payment of capital related expenditures. So if they need a condenser replaced, ammonia cycle, chillers, et cetera, that's how they would plan on financing that. And then at the other end of the spectrum is Comox Courtney, where the curling club actually owns that building. So they've been able to raise substantial amounts of capital grant financing for the maintenance and expansion and operation of well, not operation, but for the replacement of chillers and condensers, et cetera. Again, because they are owners, they can put up the collateral, they can finance over 20 years, that sort of thing. So it does vary. Comox Courtney is a bit of an exception. We are absolutely an exception. Yeah.
Thank you. Councilor Carr, you good? Okay. Councilor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Tony. And you know, I've been down there a few times. Like Councilor Beal, I haven't been on the ice because nobody did staff.
We'll get you there.
I know, but I do support sports, so that's why I come. And we just must do something. I mean, this is a Hail Mary. We've got to do something. We can't let it go. This is the best ice there is. So,
well,
but thank you very much for your presentation, and I'm hoping we can do something in this emergency.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, good to go. Okay. Thanks very much for your presentation, Tony. Yeah. Good luck for your upcoming season right now, eh? Got a few bond spills coming up?
We do.
Good.
Firefighting in February will be the next big one.
Firefighters?
That's always an exciting.
Oh, that'll be fun. So the next presentation we have is from the Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce, the Visitor Information Center funding, a presentation by Megan Walker regarding the Visitor Information Center fee for service agreement funding. Well, Megan, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship, Mayor O'Brien, esteemed members of council and city staff. My name is Megan Walker, and I'm here representing the Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce as the president of the board of directors. Before we begin, I'd just like to share that unfortunately, Rob Ferguson, our treasurer, was meant to be here, and he's unable to attend this afternoon, as well as our executive director who had a conflict. So nonetheless, we thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'm here to discuss ongoing support needed for the Visitor Information Center, which we operate under a fee-for-service agreement with the city. So firstly, addressing our current financial challenges and building needs. Our Visitor Information Center plays a critical role in serving this community and welcoming visitors, but it currently operates on an operating deficit of approximately $20,000 a year annually. It does vary more or less depending on the year. Additionally, the building, which was initially funded by chamber members on city donated land, is aging and will require further maintenance to remain viable. This financial strain, combined with expected future repairs, poses challenges to our ability to provide a high quality service experience and maintain this asset for the public good. To address this, we are respectfully requesting an additional $40,000 annually in support over and above what we currently receive. This increase will help us cover the deficit and ensure that the center is well maintained and continues to serve the Parksville community and its visitors. We do have a shared interest in the visitor center. As I mentioned, it represents a significant community investment as outlined in our fee-for-service agreement. And it emphasized our shared commitment to promote economic and civic welfare in Parksville. It was built with contributions from the chamber members on that city donated land, as mentioned. But it's more than just a facility for visitors. It serves as a vital resource that supports local businesses and enhances the overall experiences of Parksville. This agreement that we currently have underscores our mutual responsibility to maintain this asset as part of our community's economic health and vibrancy. Tourism is a cornerstone of our local economy here in Parksville, driving revenue for local businesses and creating jobs. Studies show that visitor centers play a vital role in extending tourist stays, increasing visitor spending, and promoting local attractions, which has a ripple effect on economic growth. A well-supported visitor center helps Parksville remain a vibrant destination and encourages repeat visits, benefiting our economy and enhancing community pride. We also recognize that many of the amenities that visitors enjoy also increase the quality of life for our residents and drive further investment into our community. In summary, we're asking for this additional funding to ensure the Visitor Information Center remains a valuable, sustainable resource that benefits not only visitors, but our entire community. We believe an investment in the visitor center is investment in the economic health and well-being of Parksville. I did provide some written documentation that you're welcome to take with you and ask questions now or at any time. So we thank you so much for considering our request, and I welcome any questions you may have, and I hope I can answer them without our treasurer or executive director.
Yeah, we understand, Megan, the situation that you're in, so thanks for you being here today.
My pleasure.
We do have your background information. I had that handout to me anyway, so I'm following along as you're speaking here. I just want to make sure I got the ask correct. Megan, did you say today we're looking for 40,000 over and above?
In addition to the current agreement, correct, yeah.
Because that's in a little bit of conflict because in the background information, like when you applied, it said like the current agreement is 56,000.
Correct.
Rough and dirty, and if you add 40,000 onto that, then my math is showing you about $96,000.
I think that's correct, yeah.
But yet in the background information, it says an increase to 120,000.
Sorry, in this information, you mean?
When you filled out your application, and I know that when we met earlier with Amir,
yeah, so these are the actual
120,000 needed.
These are the actual hard numbers that we were able to do, but I have to say that this is a little bit of forensic accounting, as the visitor center didn't used to be separated in costs from the Chamber of Commerce. So this is what we were able to come up with going backwards and reviewing the costs of the visitor center versus the chamber operations, which operate out of the same location.
Right.
And for instance, like wages in here is actually, even though the building is 2/3 visitor center, 1/3 chamber, have been split half and half. We've taken a look at that, and we feel that that's a fair allocation, but it's an estimate.
Okay, yeah, and I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I appreciate the handout, but without my magnifying glass, there's not a chance I can read the passage.
Yeah, I can't read it either, actually.
I will study it.
I have to hold it about here before
Yeah,
it makes any sense.
yeah, I have to.
I sent an electronic copy. I'm sure the staff can share with you.
Yeah, if I can have it on my iPad, I can make it bigger. So that's all I need. I'll look at it later. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm still a little unclear with the ask. Because when we spoke before, like we were just talking about the increase of like 56,000 you're currently getting, and it was suggested that you need that to be increased to 120,000.
We also receive funding from Destination BC of approximately 24,000. So between those two sources of funding, that would come up to the total we need to keep it operating, correct?
The 24,000 from Destination BC?
Correct.
Right, okay, then we're getting closer to those numbers.
Yeah.
Jiving. So,
sorry.
No, and that makes sense. I just want to make sure that we have the right figures here. So I appreciate that. When we recognize that visitation for the last 10 years has declined, considerably declined, as we mentioned.
Not to Parksville, but to the visitor centers, yes.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, no, yeah, let's get that right. To the Visitor Information Center. COVID played a part in that. We're taking that just right out. We're just trying our best to forget about that and put that behind us. But in the meantime, we recognize just typically on a typical good year, the visitor information continues to have lesser visits because everybody's using this. And so that's a fact of life, and we get that now. When we had our presentation earlier with ourselves anyways, with yourself, Megan, and Amir anyways, the comments were made that this is what you require to continue operating the Visitor Information Center.
Correct.
So as you know, we're just taking information at this particular point. And so we have to sit back and digest it. But at the same time, I have to know, like when we do deliberations, if the ask is X, we look at X and then maybe it's X minus 20% or X plus 20%, whichever, how much money we have left in the kitty, quite frankly. And so I'm suggesting that at the status quo right now, we're at $56,000. It was suggested that the chamber could not operate it for $56,000. It was unoperable at that time, and they could not continue to operate that. Is that correct? Because if council, like, these are the people that are going to make the information with the money we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a finite amount, as you can see, there's a finite amount of money and a large, almost infinite amount of requests.
Yeah.
And so what we have to know is, like, if we say, take your 56,000, we can't even do that. We got to split it among equally. If we drop that down to 30,000 or something, is that going to say, you're just going to say, thanks very much, we're going to move on. It's been fun.
I certainly hope not. I'll say that we would have to be extremely creative. We did average out the numbers to see, that number is quite reasonable. We have a good volunteer base in our community, and it would be hoped that we would be able to find another way to make up the difference. I did some quick research, just even on, the number of hours we're required to remain open with the covenant that we have with the city for the land. If we had 2 minimum wage employees, which it's best practice to have 2 people there for safety, that in itself would use the current funding from both Destination BC and the city completely with wages, not including benefits, maintenance of the building, anything like that. So the amount of hours we are required to open based on the covenant uses up the entirety of what we receive in funding. So perhaps there's an opportunity to have a discussion about that, involve more volunteer hours. I know my husband and I have been mowing the lawn. We don't have flags. There's other ways potentially that we could come up with doing some of those things. So I would never say never, but also that is an asset of our membership that they have paid for and invested in and expect us to operate. So if the funding was different than what we requested, I would hope that we would approach our membership and find out what they would like to do with the asset that they pay for. So.
Yeah, that answers the question exactly, Megan, and I appreciate that. And I recognize that it's a difficult and there may be, consideration to, like, maybe, what are the slowest days of the week? Could we just close? Like, you've got records for that. And
absolutely. And at this time, the covenant doesn't allow us to do that. But if that would open for negotiation, then potentially that's an option.
Exactly, because it's all a matter of hourly to you. And I totally appreciate that. Yeah. So I think that's a discussion definitely worth having. Yeah. And we can move on with that. So
appreciate that.
Thank you, Megan. That's I'll get off the soap stand now, and council, go ahead. Councilor Grant, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Megan, thank you so much for your commitment to the chamber. I know that you personally have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it.
I have.
I guess a few questions just around, like, the backdrop to a lot of this is that chambers and visitor centers are both evolving in terms of their mandate in our changing society, and technology has kind of replaced some of these things. I think recently you did some strategic planning. Is that true? And can you maybe speak a little bit about where that's headed in terms of where the vision is for the chamber moving forward?
Yeah.
And how
so-
does the visitor center fit into that? And all the other sort of things the chamber historically has done.
Right. So we sort of view the Visitor Information Center, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the strategic plan off the top of my head, but as one of the pillars of our economic development and community engagement. And while technology has replaced a lot of the need for some people for visitor center, we certainly do have a lot of older visitors here that come. And visitors from outside the country that come and use our Wi-Fi to look for things or ask for specific advice. They really like boots on the ground advice. They don't necessarily just want to look at TripAdvisor reviews. Sorry, I'm going around to all your questions there at once. And we don't log website, email, or telephone inquiries, which I think is potentially a mistake. It undervalues how much advice we actually give about the community as a whole. So it's just walk-in parties. So, if there's 4,000, 6,000 people, like walk-in parties, that could potentially be actually 8,000, 12,000 actual people that have come into the visitor center. So different communities report that differently. So as part of the strategic plan of the chamber, our goal is to make sure that everything we do impacts our community and our members positively, and that we don't ask our members necessarily to subsidize events and activities that don't provide aren't self-funded somehow. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
Follow up, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
For sure. So there's not really one clear answer on that because it is the challenge that we're in.
Mhm.
I understand that you started separating out the books. I think the financials we got so far don't indicate that separation. Am I reading these
So
right?
the ones I gave you today are the ones that we have gone back and separated. So 2024 is separate moving forward. These are going backwards in time and doing our best to estimate the costs of the
So
visitor
those are
center.
the teeny tiny ones, not the audited financials.
Yeah, so these ones here that were on the 3-page handout I gave you today.
That you gave today.
Right there you go. If you have our budget and financials that we gave you before, those were not separated. That was the total chamber and visitor center financials.
Okay. I was looking at the one that was.
Yeah,
part
that's
of that.
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And
You're
now look at this.
Thank you. Question? Any other council members? Good.
Oh, I expected more.
I was going to be disappointed. If you did.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Counselor
want,
Beal.
I wouldn't want to let you down.
I
No,
know.
of course not.
Yeah, I'm just waiting. for
Thank
that,
you.
yeah.
Through the mayor, thank you. Thank you very much, Megan, for stepping up and coming here. And it is unfortunate that the treasurer wasn't able to attend, or the executive director, but having this today is helpful to have a good look at it. And I can appreciate that the cost of labor, even at minimum wage, certainly adds up, and the challenges with needing to cover certain hours. And yet there might not be visitors during that time, and understanding that the agreement with the city is for visitor service. So how does one, sort of square that? And I'm not 100% sure how that's done, but do you have any information regarding relationships with chambers, chamber agreements in other island communities that could, sort of expand our knowledge and see that bigger picture of how that works? Because, I certainly agree with Councillor Grenz that the whole visitor experience has changed vis-a-vis visitor center, because, people look things up and get their recommendations that way in many cases.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Beal, for your great question. We have started with our VIU MBA students doing a research project on that. I do have some preliminary results, which I'm happy to share here, but I don't have anything to give you. But in our preliminary answers, some towns get less funding than we do, some get more. The majority to be honest, do get more than we do. So for instance, Port Alberni receives $89,000 from their municipality, plus the 23,000 from Destination BC. Port Hardy actually this year shut down their visitor center. They're a much smaller community. They were previously receiving 60,000 from their municipality, which is slightly more than we get, plus 25,000 from the Destination BC. And they said it fell short of their operating costs, which were approximately $130,000. So they, as a chamber, have opted out of running a visitor center, and therefore there's no visitor center there anymore. Comox Valley is a bit of a different, much like the curling club, seems like they do things differently in Comox Valley. That is run by a third party, but the visitor center itself is operated and, rather funded 100% by their municipality. And then they have additional funds from having like a retail component to theirs. So they receive around $150,000 annually. Ladysmith receives around 48,000, but they also receive Destination BC funding as well. And they receive funds from Tourism Cowichan, which is different than our community. We do not take any of the MRDT funds from the Tourism Association, the hotel tax, to run the visitor center. And they're also now receiving another additional 18,000 to assist with marketing initiatives from their Economic Development and Tourism Association. So overall, they receive more funding from us, but it's from different sources and less from the municipality than we have. So there are different models out there. And there are several, including Comox Courtney, chambers who've decided not to run their visitor centers because it is a challenge financially. I think we have a bonus in that we have that lovely building, and the chamber can operate out of that building as well and share that expense with the visitor center, but it still needs to be able to cover the basic costs of staying open on its own without the chamber membership necessarily paying to fund that if they don't need it. Like, you know, plumbers don't need to have a visitor center. Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Gore, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Megan, can you speak a little bit about the visitors that are coming to the visitor center and type of queries or questions that you're getting? Is it like typical, hey, what's the nice places to visit in Parksville, or is more like business related? What's the best place to go eat? What are some of the recommendations for places to stay? And is that like changing, or like people just coming to, like you mentioned, use the Wi-Fi? Is it like more of a rest stop? And perhaps if that space in the future, could the chamber be looking at, and if they're already putting some food trucks there to have some extra revenue? So how is that changing recently in the last few years?
Certainly. So as a member of the board of directors, I get some basic information, but obviously I'm not there on a day-to-day basis. But I do know that we have, we obviously direct them to accommodation, retail, places to eat, things like that, the best attractions to visit. So I would say that would be the majority of the inquiries. Along with that, obviously using the facilities as well. We do have a small component of retail there as well. Sorry, what was the rest of the question? We potentially could do that. We would need to install infrastructure there though, so that would require an investment upfront, which we sadly do not have at the moment. You know, where we at this point aren't replacing our flags because we can't afford to replace the flagpole. And I'm mowing the lawn, so. Yeah.
And thank you for that. The reason I bring it up is I also see the benefit of the visitor center to the chamber and our local businesses as well. So there's that multifold aspect to that. Thank you.
Sorry, just to follow up, for me personally as a realtor, a lot of people come as well to ask for maps and relocation guides. So I have my relocation guide in the visitor center. So I do get business from it as well as a member.
There.
Yeah.
There's the benefit.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's great. Thanks, Megan. I
Yeah.
think we've exhausted our questions here for you today. Thanks again for holding up the fort. You've done
Thank you.
well.
Thank you very
Great,
much.
thank you. Thanks, Megan. The next presentation we have is from Holly, and it would be the last presentation. Are we saving the best to last here? Of course. And Mark. I see that. I love the outfits. Great. Yes. And one very well-behaved dog, I gotta say, at the back there.
Yes,
Very good.
dear Blair.
Yes. So today we have Holly Carnegie Letcher and Mark Desvaux from the Parksville Community Park Labyrinth Renewal. A presentation by Holly and Mark requesting renewal of the Parksville Community Park Labyrinth. You've listened to a lot of other presentations before you got to us. You know the drill. 5 minutes, but here you go. I'll give you, what you need. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Your Worship, and thank you, Parksville councillors, as well. We'd like to first acknowledge, as there's been a lot of media news about elected officials recently, about the job that you do and how you deal with so many incredible community organisations and volunteers. And we just want to thank you for your support for everyone today. I'd also like to acknowledge Holly, who, as you may know, was the originator of the idea for the Parksville Labyrinth over 11 years ago, and coordinates over 50 volunteers to help create and repaint the labyrinth. And as well, I'd like to acknowledge all of the users that have shown up today of the Parksville Labyrinth, the advocates, of which I am here as one of those representing as a user of the labyrinth, really to give you an overview about the success of the labyrinth over the last 11 years, and Crystal Burgess as well, who worked with Holly as one of the artists on the labyrinth. Just as a very quick background, to put this into perspective, my personal journey with the labyrinth was one through grief when I lost my wife a number of years ago to cancer. And it has become an incredibly powerful part of my journey in healing. And this is just one of many stories that we've collected about how the labyrinth has changed people's lives and increased the well-being of citizens of Parksville and beyond. From a global perspective, we see a lot of challenges in the world. We want to ensure that within our community, the labyrinth becomes a beacon and a landmark of peace, something which will affect not just individuals, but communities as well. And the labyrinth in itself is a very quiet place. So it doesn't really shout about what it does and how it's used. So that's really the purpose of today. We're here to celebrate labyrinths and how the Parksville Labyrinth has made such a difference in people's lives. The statistics you see on the screen are from a study of labyrinths across the world. And as you can see, 86% of people having been in a labyrinth feel much more relaxed, 83% more peaceful, 80% more reflective. But also when you look at the opposite, 71% less stress and less anxiety when people have gone in a labyrinth and come out. And this was a very large study that was done. Quick history of the Parksville Labyrinth. This was a labyrinth which was a project really by Parksville City Council along with Holly and a group of many volunteers. In 2013, every 5 years, the park maintenance was requested to repaint, which has happened in 2018. The labyrinth today is overdue for renewal to restore it to its original vibrancy. So this was the original hovercraft pad in 2013. This was the beginning of the 2013 creation of the labyrinth with all the volunteers. And as you can see, it was put together and then words started to appear on Labyrinth, which are actually contributed by individuals, including children that were walking past whilst it was being painted. And many of those words are words that members of the public came up with and added as the Parksville Labyrinth was being created. We got a number of letters which we've given you in a quite comprehensive document, about 25 pages worth of people that support the Parksville Labyrinth, giving you a breadth of the numbers. But this is from Lars Howlett, who's a master labyrinth builder in California. He considers the labyrinth to be an exquisite example of community art. And this really surprised me that someone who actually costs these up if we were to commission something like this again from scratch. The average cost of something like this is around 35 to 70,000 for the time of all the professional artists that would build it and plan it and put together the team to do it. And all of that has been contributed for free by volunteers. So I really think it's worth remembering that. We did a survey of 150 people who were passing the Labyrinth, and we asked them, how often do you use it? Daily to weekly, 43%, bi-monthly to monthly, 37%, quarterly, 12%, and less than quarterly, 8%. But the interesting question we asked is, how important do you believe this Labyrinth is to remain a feature in the park? And the average score of those 150 people was 9 out of 10, which we found surprisingly high, actually. But it said to me, wow, this is something that people really appreciate, use, and is important to them. This was a word cloud that we created from all of the qualitative responses that people gave about what they get from using the Labyrinth, and the size of the words represents the number of times these words came up. And as you can see, there's a very diverse mix of different things that people use. Dr. Robert Waite, who's one of our family GPs in Parksville, supports the Labyrinth because of the rare combination of a free activity that movement with mindfulness, and he wholeheartedly supports it as a doctor, asking some of his patients to go there and use it. Michelle Stillwell, who needs no introduction, talks about the benefits of a walkable, wheelable mural that the City of Parksville has given as a gift to so many in the community. Is an example of one person using it. The Andrew Twiddy also actually highlights a very important part, which is this idea of promotion of peace in a world which is obviously very challenged right now. Parksville actually created a landmark that promotes peace, and it's beautifully twinned in some ways when you think about it with the War Memorial, and something that I would hope that the council would, over the coming years, makes that a real central part of what we want to try to encourage within our community. We have with us Blair Meadows, who gave us a testimonial about how he's used it through his PTSD over the last decade to help heal from mental health and find peace, walking it several times a week or more. You may be familiar with Barbara Niven from Chesapeake Shore. She recently posted up a video that went viral on her Instagram, over 20,000 views so far, of her coming back to Parksville this summer specifically to walk the Labyrinth. And she says that it is her favorite place on the island. We have representation from the Indigenous community as well. Bonnie Finato is very much part of the creation of it, who's been talking with some of the Indigenous groups about future representation within the Labyrinth, words or images that could be, could expand its inclusion. But also the way in which the Labyrinth is being used by so many different community groups. This is one example here, remembering the murder of the missing Indigenous women. We have from the retired Dean of Vancouver Island, talking about how she comes in from outside of the community and advises tourists who are traveling to stop by and enjoy it. So there's a huge benefit of bringing people in. I see this all the time when I'm using it. Kids use it as a maze, running in and out, timed by their dads and mums, how quickly you can use it. So again, it's however people want to use it. It's kind of an expansion in some ways of the playground for them. Former retired nurse told us that, in terms of the connections of physical health, mental, emotional, spiritual health, the Labyrinth addresses it for all the people that use it. And these are just a very quick example of all different user groups that have used it that we're aware of over the last 11 years. You can see a very diverse group. Here's one group of people using it recently. And these are pictures that we've taken. So one of the requests we would love to make today is the request for the renewal, the repainting, as we call it, of the Labyrinth, which is estimated cost of only $800. So when we look at this over a 5-year cost, we're requesting a line item of maybe $160 a year be put in so that it can be renewed each year. And also really to ask the council to support its Renewal as a very important landmark within Parksville. And this is how it looked when it was renewed. Holly is ready to go with her group of volunteers in May to June of next year. This is the sign that we have already that the council have put up. And we have, the one thing is if you go and visit it today, it does look very much in need of renewal. As you can see, that's what it looks like today. So with just a few dollars and a lot of volunteer hours and a small amount of coordination with the Parksville staff of the city and the parks, we can renew it to look like this for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. You must have done okay, Mark. You must have done all right.
Oh,
yeah, they've lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So Mark has got a previous history with us, of course, working on the Oceanside track project. I was just wondering if we could maybe make this a track and field event, a walking around the labyrinth.
Yeah.
Before or after an event. Is that something that maybe, beneficial? I'm just saying,
Well, actually, it expands the walk with everyone going backwards and forwards, which we all do. I worked out it expands the length of the walk by an extra 10 minutes because it takes 5 minutes if you go in and out of it. So,
okay. I wasn't aware of that. Thank you. Holly, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I would just like to thank you for welcoming us here today, and also for the group of supporters, artists, and users of the Labyrinth that came to support as well today. And I just welcome any questions and hope that this is something that we can renew, because we're all a group of volunteers that have dedicated many hundreds of hours to design, to organize volunteers, to come together with ideas. And then when we do paint the Labyrinth, we welcome, it's an incredible community experience where anybody walking on the boardwalk that wants to pick up a paintbrush is welcome with some direction to add their brush stroke, as well as their ideas. We had a young woman, I think a 9-year-old, the last time we repainted in 2018, who asked if she could contribute a word, because we have different words like hope and peace and friendship and community that are written on the Labyrinth. And she asked to write the word humility. And so she did, she added that word to the Labyrinth. So it's just an incredible opportunity for our community to come together, as well as for tourists and visitors, because I have friends from all over the world that came when we first created the Parksville Labyrinth in 2013. It was for the Labyrinth Conference, which was an international conference that we brought. I was co-chair of that committee. We brought to Parksville. It was the first time it ever came to Canada. It's the only time it's ever been in Canada. And we still have visitors that come back to walk the Labyrinth from different places in the world, from Ireland, from Australia, from South America. Like, we have people that continue to stay in touch with me, as well as some of the master labyrinth builders. For example, Lars was one of the people quoted from California. He and another master labyrinth builder, Robert Ferre, were both here in Parksville. They're like the people in the world for building labyrinths, and they build labyrinths that are upwards of $250,000. So I feel like the contribution that the many artists from this community, as well as communities all up and down the island, have come to contribute. And we have some amazing people that are wanting to contribute in 2025. Bill Helene is one of them, are an Indigenous artist. And we're also speaking with Monk. So she's also been a big supporter of the Labyrinth in the past years. So just an example of the amazing people that come together to join us and to celebrate. Thank you.
Thanks, Holly. Good. That's great. Is that Ursula in the back row? Is that Ursula back there? No, Ursula? Oh, yeah. Sorry, there's another Labyrinth supporter. Her name's Ursula.
Oh,
Yeah, she watches, she's a little white dog. She's down there. She's talked to me many times. and
okay.
told me the
I
value,
haven't
but
met
just not
Ursula yet, but
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
been in, she has sent me a email. So I
Yeah,
haven't yet
I've met her numerous times. Yes, she
Okay.
recognized me. So that's all right. That's great. I thank you for your presentation. I thank you for condensing. We had many letters, from different groups that were supportive. Thank you for getting all together and coming as one. And that was very helpful. A little overwhelming and such. I see a picture being held up at the back. Is that a rendering of your new project, or is that just a picture
This
of
is
you?
the original design that Crystal Burgess, who's holding it up, after I did the original design, she's the artist that came and did this rendition. So this is what it looked like, or that was the vision that we had before we painted.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Wood, can you see that okay? You'll have to take our word for it. There you go. Nice. Yeah, that's a good look, Councillor Wood. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I understand the ask. Council, go ahead, Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor. As you previously heard, a member mentioned that I love history. I also love art. Thank you again. And more than everything, I love the community when they come together and make a project like this happen. And I see the enthusiasm and the engagement on this project. So I want to thank you all for taking time and presenting to council. My question to you is, what is this $800 for? Like, you can't really do much with $800 these days. And you mentioned how much of the other labyrinths are costing around the world. So could you speak that a little bit about the cost for this? And also, would the volunteers be, or are they already involved in the sort of maintenance and upkeep of the labyrinth in any way?
Okay, so first of all, the cost, the $800, well, I think originally was paint and supplies were provided by Parks Maintenance, and that was our understanding in the initial, when it was initially approved in 2013. And then every 5 years, we were invited to repaint, and that was supposed to be part of Parks' budget. But when we were supposed to repaint in 2023, then it was put on hold. Then this year we were going to be repainting and it was put on hold again. And that amount of money was what we were told was, well, it was $530 something the last time we repainted. And we were asked to, for inflation, that paint and supplies we guessed about $800 if we were asking for that money. Although it was a bit confusing because we thought that was part of Parks maintenance budget that just got absorbed. That's what I was told by the park supervisor. It was just kind of part of what they did to maintain that space every 5 years, or it kind of got spread out. So we put forth that dollar amount because we're volunteers. Some of the money would be appreciated if some of our artists from up island who come down, just even we were thinking gas money or food and like, snacks and water for our volunteers, like that wasn't really what we built into that. But the $800 really was for paint and supplies because that was what we understood it cost.
I see. So just on that, Holly, just a question. So the $800, if we were say, okay, you're successful, here's a check for $800. Does that mean you're going to go out and buy all the paints and stuff like that? Or do you want just us to include $800 for our parks people to go out and buy them?
Well, that's what we thought. Yes. Because the parks people, like Warren usually calls me and says, what paint do you guys want? Do you want the same stuff? Is there any additional stuff? And then I just say, no, that's all great. Whatever we did last time, or we want these 2 extra colors, and it's done. And he shows up with it on the paint days, and it's done. So we'd rather not have to do that because he's got it all organized and he knows what we need. And it seems to be, I think it was pretty straightforward. We kind of have it organized from the last 2 times we painted.
And then about the, so the in-kind donation with our parks crew would have to go in the pressure washer. You know, I would suggest, you know, before you put your paint down and that type of thing. And then my only other question, if there's a tri-bench, you know,
The C-Star bench in the center?
Yeah,
Yes.
the C-Star anyways, does that need work as well? Or is that just
Well-
need a coat of paint on it? Or is that?
So that's a good question. I mean, again, that was something that that city parks, like they, like Warren had that all made by somebody local within as far as I understand, like that was it was a project that they paid for. And so it's just part of maintenance, really. It should have been part
What a
of,
great guy.
should have been
Yeah.
part of parks maintenance.
Okay, that's.
Right? And it was amazing what they created.
Yeah, I'm down there regularly, so I see it like maybe it needs a coat of paint.
Needs a coat of paint.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that's good. I appreciate that. Councillor Beal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Holly and Mark, for speaking today. Mark, this does remind me a little bit of the launch of raising money for replacing the track. You know, when the track was in terrible shape, and here we are with the Labyrinth in less than stellar shape. So thank you for that. You do that well. I certainly, there are many things about the Labyrinth that I really appreciate. I appreciate the community art. I totally appreciate the community engagement that allows this to happen. Community engagement is in fact one of the pillars of our strategic plan. And so to have events that bring together people from the community to enhance our park and the experience of both locals and visitors is wonderful. I happen to be part of a running group, and although I confess I don't often do the whole Labyrinth. I don't have the patience. I need to work on that, I know. But we started out on our running guide, if you like, would always say, well, you're going to run down to the hovercraft state, you know, and finally that shifted and it's like, we're going to run around the Labyrinth and then you're going here and then you're going there. And we certainly do that. And some of the members have just spontaneously said to me how much they love the Labyrinth and they see people going through there, even as they're running by. And I do like to pick a word as I run by and try to think about that word for at least some of the day. So I think it adds a nice splash of color to what was formerly a very gray area, of course, and to actually have a landmark at that end of the park rather than the open area. And it also has not gotten in the way, quite frankly, with occasional things that take place there. I was down for the emergency social services. The ham radio operators were doing an event down there and there's plenty of room for them to ring around the outside and do everything that they're doing. So there's lots of room for everybody there, no matter how they're using it. So I think it's really appreciated. I did have a chance at a recent meeting that we had. We're having budget talks right now, of course, and our manager, I always forget it was manager or director of parks, but Graham Giddon was there and had a chance to ask him about, you know, what was involved with Labyrinth maintenance. So he did seem to be quite knowledgeable about it and implied if you had that it can be worked into the schedule, if that can work out. And he did figure out a dollar figure for the amount of time that goes into it. What isn't clear to me, I mean, if the paint's included there, that's fine. But I was also hearing from you that it would be nice to have some, let's say, something to address people's traveling expenses to come down and do that. So I don't know how that would work out if there was some additional funds that's being asked for, but perhaps that can be discussed with the, I don't know, with the parks, you know, with the parks folks as to how that costing would work out.
Yeah, I think it's I think that shouldn't get in the way of getting the Labyrinth renewed. I mean, between the volunteers, that money can be raised between people that love the Labyrinth. So yeah, just to focus on the repaint, absolutely. And a great thing that you said, Mary, about the idea, everyone's kind of interacts with the labyrinth, even if they don't go in it. Whenever I walk down, everyone walks around the edges, sometimes looks at words. So there's a lot more than meets the eye that the labyrinth actually brings to the community. So yeah, I think from my perspective, just as a user of it, I even use it, you know, every single week, and it breaks my heart to see it in the state it currently is. I think one thing I would love to see just as a user of it within the park's maintenance is there's a beautiful bed that's immaculately kept, no weeds and trimmed right by it. But then there are quite a lot of kind of grass that grows up. If that could just be kept, you know, which is just general kind of maintenance of the grounds, it would just make it over the years, or over the 5 years before renewal, it would just keep it that much more beautiful as well. So that would just be my own personal suggestion.
And not to mention, it's right beside the best beach for stone stacking in Nutshuck style. It seems to be quite popular down there now.
Yeah.
So not so much in Nutshuck, but just stone stacking. I've noticed it's quite a collection that we have down there. So yeah, it's right beside that. So maybe that's therapeutic as well.
Right.
Yeah, I noticed it. Any other questions, council? I thank you at this time for, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. I agree with so many things that you said. I have many memories of my kids going through there. And it's such a beautiful culmination of our just amazing boardwalk to come to the end with that destination there. So thank you for your efforts on that. Personally, I'd love to see this as part of the park maintenance. And so hopefully we can discuss that. In terms of timing, just you mentioned, was it April, May that you're talking about, and this year or next year, or does it?
I would say end of May, beginning of June, because the cement needs to be warm enough, and also it needs to be dry enough. We need at least a week where we've got dry, and so that when we paint and then we put the sealant on, that everything is dry and secure, because we did have one year where it went down the drain when it started to pour rain right after we'd spent a full day painting. So it was pretty, yeah. So we want to make sure we've got the right timing for painting.
West Coast living.
Yeah.
And so you're locked and loaded, ready to go kind of whenever in terms of your team?
Absolutely. We will do that.
Okay, thank you.
Ready to go.
Okay. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the concept here, and I appreciate it for sure. It's part of our community and the whole experience. So you would like volunteers to paint, but the budget for the paint could be in parks. Would that be how you would like it? That's the concept? Okay, just so I understand. Yeah, because it's just, how can you let it go? You can't.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Actually, one other thing that I think would also improve it's because of its location. It would be amazing if there could be some kind of signage in other areas of the park that lead people to it, because I think it could be even more popular than it is right now, just with a couple of signs somewhere in the park guiding people there as well. So, but that's all I'm going to ask for.
And whenever we suggest another sign, there's always a group that starts singing the song. Sign. I won't say the rest of the words because they get a little launchy, but anyways. So thank you so much. I think we've covered all the questions. Great presentation. I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your presence, cheerleading squad. Good job. Very well behaved. That's appreciated. So, council, we have next on our agenda, I'm going to actually ask for a 10-minute comfort break before we go to our Director of Finance. Sorry, Chad, putting it off again, but we want to be bright and alert. So I'll suggest a 10-minute coffee break. We'll resume at 3:50. Thank you. Good job. Good job, Joel. Kate was looking for you. Thank you. So we'll resume our council meeting. Council, next report on the agenda is from the Director of Finance regarding the community group funding requests. It's going to be an overview that she's given. We're not making any decisions today on everything we heard today. You need time to digest a lot of this stuff that's going on. And that's what Jed is going to give us. She's going to give us some really good advice.
Okay, good afternoon. First thing I'd like to say is this was kind of a new process to have the groups come. And I know that came from some requests from council to hear back from groups that have, you know, our line item funding as well as others. So I think that was interesting. So we'll look for feedback in the future on the process and where it goes from there. You were given a handout that had kind of 10-year summary of what has been provided in the past. So I'll leave that with you as well, just in terms of reviewing some of what you heard today, some of the information that was provided, and that'll help to supplement that information in terms.
This is homework, everyone.
Right, homework. Okay. This is a quick summary of kind of the line item amounts that are included right now in the financial plan. Okay, so on that large sheet shows what's currently included. So everything you heard today isn't all incremental. We carried forward the line item amounts for approval in the financial plan already. So you can reference what they asked for in addition to those amounts, but here's what's already included in the financial plan, the core financial plan that's been presented over the last couple of weeks. In addition to that kind of monetary funding, as you know, we also provide a lot of support to other community groups through facilities, through land that's provided for nominal fees, through sports facilities that a number of different groups provide. We've got some operating agreements, you know, with facilities, again, that are at nominal amounts. So you've got a summary there of those as well, just to have an understanding overall of what we provide within the city resources to community groups.
Thanks, Jetta. Can you go back one slide?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So there's a VIU bursary in addition to a Ballenas scholarship, but that just jumped out at me and I wasn't aware of that. Thank you.
Right. Yep.
I have a question as well.
Councillor Grant, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to Jetta. Does this also include permissive tax exemptions?
That's the next slide.
Oh,
Okay, so here we go, permissive tax exemptions. And so as you know, this is something that's approved by council typically in September of each year. It has to be filed with BC assessment by October. So just to give you some kind of idea of the totals, council policy right now is a $225,000 cap on permissive tax exemptions. And then there's two others that are provided outside the Nature Trust of BC. Exemption is outside of that cap. And there's some other senior and low income housing that's provided. So there's actually a total of an estimated amount of exemptions that amount to about $307,000.
I'm sleeping.
There you
go. Councillor Gore.
No. Thank you, Mayor. So $225,000 cap. Can you remind me again when this was put forth by the council and what was the premise behind this cap? When I guess when the taxes are increasing over time, it looks like the overall benefit, just like we talk about the homeowners grant, does not really catch up to the need. So is that what it is? The same idea?
Well, essentially, there would have been a full report brought in September to council about the permissive tax exemptions. So the history is all in that report. We can probably forward that to you again. But essentially, it used to be a percentage of property taxes, and maybe 4 years ago.
CEO Kaler, yeah, you explain the Al Greer motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it was in 2022, council agreed as a majority, or I can't remember if it was full or not, but
I think
the majority of council agreed that my recollection is a somewhat philosophical discussion around what the role of local governments is in funding community organizations with taxpayer money. And there was a growing demand and request, like the amount was growing every year. And there was a feeling around the table from what my observations were of the conversation that it was becoming unsustainable to keep using taxpayer money for those various community groups. And so there was a committee prior to that, a citizen advisory committee that had come up with what was a pretty cumbersome and complex policy that, as the Director of Finance mentioned, was based on percentages or a cap, whichever was lower. And it just became somewhat hard to figure out every year what the best part was. So there was a lot of discussion. We can find the dates so if you wanted to rewatch the debate on our archives, but what it ended up being was that Council of the Day recommended this 225% cap instead of the percentage, which would have increased over the years as the assessment went. And I think that council felt like they wanted to somewhat get out of that because there's so many demands on local government from the core business that was creating a tax burden outside of the core business, I guess, that at that time the council didn't feel was a sustainable practice.
Yeah, and I could just also say that not all municipalities do property tax exemptions. It's strictly, it's discretionary with council. And what we were finding, and this was pointed out anyways, that it was known that Parksville was a good place to open a nonprofit because you don't have to pay property taxes. And so we were inundated with nonprofits moving to Parksville, locating here because they could operate their offices here. And so they were getting a tax exemption. And then if the more people that get tax exemptions, it just means everybody else pays more because we have our operating budget that we have to maintain. And so that's what the problem was. Our taxes, our revenue source was being cut. And it was kept on getting higher and higher, that amount. That is why it got in there. So go ahead, ask your question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thanks, Council, for entertaining this. I know this is old knowledge, but it's kind of new to me. I didn't do my homework on this. Sorry. And if the staff can tell me now that we've had a couple of years of budget with this cap, have we heard anything at all from the organizations that were benefiting from no cap previously? If there's any financial hardships in any way that they've experienced, or have they written to the city or staff regarding this?
If I may, through the mayor.
Go ahead.
So the first time the cap was introduced, for about a year, there wasn't much of an impact, but the first time where we had to reduce, I believe it was to 90-something%, we had about 3 people reach out to the council at the time and express concern around it. And it was basically just received and listened to by the council, but explained why that had to happen. One thing that I will mention is perhaps an added challenge for some folks is that if we give them if you as a council grant 100% tax exemption, that also exempts them from taxes from other governments. So school and hospital taxes or regional district taxes. If we give a proportionate discount, then they have to pay the taxes to the other people besides us. So that was a sort of an additional challenge. But since that time, which I think was 2022, is that, do you remember? Around 2022, I have not received anything. So I can't speak obviously for what you might receive, but it is true that it's permissive tax is 100% voluntary on the part of the city. There are some statutory tax exemptions that you do not control, and those are automatically applied to places of worship and schools and hospitals and things. Like we don't charge other governments taxes, and we don't pay property tax on our own properties. So that's not within your discretion. That just has to happen.
And just to clarify, if we do like a 90% instead of 100%, the other organizations such as the NRHGH and the hospital and the library and all that, that is not reduced by 10%, or 90%. They pay the full load if they're not in 100%, is it?
Is that
or is it reduced
prorated.
representatively for what they get?
I believed it was prorated, but do you know
Yeah, I
that?
believe it's a prorated
Is that-
amount on the others as well. Because essentially what BC assessment does is reduces the assessment by the proportions. So they're left with a taxable portion of assessment. So then that would get applied to the other jurisdictions as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so, yeah, because as municipalities, there's a huge pressure to increase our revenue. And so that's what we're advocating for coming up. But at the same time, yeah, it's.
I think if I'm-
It's the taxpayer burden, you know,
It
somebody
is.
else is paying for it.
And exactly, if I may, Mr. Mayor, that's one of the other things I recall the discussion being around is that you get to a certain threshold where that tax money has to get raised. So if you waive it or give a permissive tax to a certain group, somebody else has to pay more than they would have, like the pot has to still be filled, right? So that was a lot of the discussion that happened around that time. And yeah.
Yes, Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to add one thing too, is that there's BC assessment will also assess properties like we've seen in our community. There are a couple properties that are just not even on the roll. They don't even appear on BC assessment, and those don't even show up at all. So there's no taxes for them either.
Yes. Yeah. But we won that one. Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to our CAO earlier mentioning that, anyway, just that there are some that are obligated. So churches, for instance, and I believe hospitals. And so, for instance, nearby Stanford Center, I think as well, Stanford Village, they do not have to pay since a portion of the spaces there are subsidized by Island Health or however that works. I understand that they're also exempt. Is that correct?
If I may, through the mayor, I don't know the specific properties off the top of my head, but the exemptions are for things that would be deemed or classified by BC assessment under those certain categories. So we don't control that, and they just basically are exempt. So if it meets that classification as a hospital facility or a government facility like a church and those types of things, they don't really even come to you. Like they're just exempt statutorily.
Yeah, so to follow up with that, that's a great question. At a later time, could you provide us that information if like in Stanford Place, long-term care homes, because we have a few long-term care homes in Parksville. It would just be interesting to know if they were actually if they fall into the category under the hospital or healthcare. It would be interesting because of where I think our society is going here.
We can download a report from BC assessment that provides that.
Just, don't spend a lot of time on just, if you just go after those ones, then it'll give us an indication of what the level is. Follow up, Councillor Beal.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a piece of information, but I think it's important to keep in the back of one's mind. I am curious about the museums, given that the museum is on city land. Do they nonetheless pay taxes, even though it's on city-owned property? Or I'm just not sure what that amount is for.
CEO Kaler.
So the majority, if not everyone that I can think of, where we have a lease, like so the lawn bowling, curling, BGC museum, what else is there? Anyone's like, they don't pay taxes. We exempt them either through the lease with us, but in that case, it's city-owned property, so there's no tax that they have to pay. They don't pay property tax.
So I'm curious as to why there's $8,100 listed up there for the museum.
So if I may, what ends up happening if we have city-owned property, but then is leased to a business that isn't statutorily exempt, then we need to permissively exempt them. So the lists that our CAO just provided are all leases. So then all of a sudden BC assessment would say, no, you're back in the pool. And we have to say, no, actually they're not because they meet our permissive tax exemption like that.
So further follow-up, but nonetheless, then that amount basically, it affects all the other organizations that are applying for some tax relief. Is that correct? Right. Okay.
Yep.
And just one final thought that I like to keep in mind is that I appreciate that when we do have permissive tax exemptions for organizations in our community, yes, the general taxpayers need to take up the slack, as it were. However, these same organizations are basically, the members are in fact our residents. So there's a bonus there. I'm just saying that there is a benefit there. And perhaps if people, I'm being facetious here now, but if people don't appreciate that, then maybe they could get involved with one of the organizations and then they'll appreciate that they've had a benefit from it.
Well, if I may, I think it is a philosophical discussion though, right? Because, you know, like you say, maybe not everyone's interested in all of those things. One, just couple of clarifying points on this. Although we say places of worship there, the footprint of a place of worship is statutorily exempt. We have to permissively exempt the parking lot or other grounds around. So that's what that amount is at the top that has a permissive tax exemption.
Good point.
So there's a distinction there. And yeah, and why we wanted to provide this, one, to understand in total what that property tax is that's essentially foregone by permissively exempting these folks, is to highlight, we've had requests from some of those organizations today, and to highlight kind of all the pieces of that support that might be given to them.
Yes. Thank you. And Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Just so I'm clear, because we kind of touched on it, when the city gives, say, 100% permissive tax exemption, the city also picks up the tab for, say, the Vancouver Island Regional Library, NRGH, the Hospital Board, the RDN, and what about utilities? Utilities are still paid for by the property and not the city. I kind of want to know, make sure that the numbers we're looking at includes any other things that might have gone on their property taxes.
If I may,
Go ahead.
this is only the municipal portion of taxes. Those other organizations also forego the income that would have otherwise come to them. It's just that council ends up making the decision for those other jurisdictions. Like it's a kind of all in one. The decision is here though. Those other jurisdictions actually don't. I mean, I guess they could advocate to you, but that decision's made. What's represented here though is only the municipal tax portion estimated at this time. And no, utilities and other such fees and charges would not be exempted.
So could I have a follow-up, Chair, please?
Go ahead, Councillor Wood.
So that's interesting, Jetta, thank you. So there's ripple effects from the decisions that we make here onto those other organizations that collect tax, and they don't have a say in it, obviously. And that makes all of the tax collection on their side more expensive for everyone else as well, if I'm following.
If I may, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can.
Councillor Gordon?
I'm just asking, why is the number lower than 225?
Sorry, what?
Microphone.
Yeah, so I was just suggesting that there's the cap and there's certain organizations that were considered within the cap.
Sorry. You didn't have your mic on. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the question is, so there's a cap at 225, and I'm guessing that's permissive tax cap, and the other one is statutory, like what, is that correct?
No, if I may, so there's the cap, and then at some point there was agreement that those senior and low income housing organizations wouldn't be considered part of the cap. And then when Nature Trust was considered for tax exemption through recent transactions with them, that was also agreed by council to not be within the $25,000 cap or 225.
If I may, through the mayor, just one other point of clarification on that. Those seniors housings that are outside of the cap get 100% automatically in the policy. So they're not subject to the cap and the sharing of that. That was a council decision first for one particular housing thing and then one particular housing development, and then it was applied by another council to all of those same things, same housing developments.
I just make sure. Councillor Wood, follow up?
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I should know this. Do we have an average percentage of what the municipal tax portion of a tax bill is on an average property? That percentage compared to, say, the library or the hospital tax or the RDN tax. Do we know what that municipal portion is on average or ballpark?
If I may, we provide a lot of these stats when we go to issue the property tax notices, and it's in a lot of the communications that Deb helps to create, but I recall it's about 50% is the municipal portion of all the jurisdictions, and typically goes out with the property taxes. We have a bit of a pie chart that shows what the city is compared to the others, but rough numbers, it varies in that ballpark.
Thank you.
Sure, he's okay. Yeah, I know. Councillor Gordon, you have another question? You have follow to? Okay, Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we don't want to get hung up here, folks.
No, I'm curious about this. Like, for example, would City SOS building be part? I mean, they have a parking lot, the MAC, are they all included in this?
Right.
Societies, is that?
Yeah, I think maybe it might be appropriate to bring back the list to council. Like
Because
there was
we
a
talked-
report in September that had all the details, and I don't have all that at the top of my mind, but typically it's an application base.
Oh, you
Yep.
have to do it every year?
Organizations apply for a permissive tax exemption and
Every year.
I apologize, I don't have all of that top of mind in terms of the specifics, but we could certainly
Keep us.
share that report again.
Yeah, if I may, through the mayor, we just brought that to council in September. There's a report, we can send the link back out, but it's about 25 properties usually each year, 23 to 25.
Right.
And they're all listed in the bylaw for the
Yeah,
following,
okay.
for
For the
2025.
following, Okay.
Okay, carry on, Joe.
Okay,
Okay, thank
thanks.
you.
Amanda, I've lost my. Can you advance one? It just needs a restart. Thank you. The other part of kind of community support and directly to residents is the rebates, and we've looked at that in the past. So again, just wanted to provide this to council, which we typically do each year in terms of what the actual usage has been. The 2024 amount is year to date. I'm not sure how much more there might be, but in the past, we've considered reducing or changing those allocations of amounts kind of to support maybe what a 3-year average is. And so not sure if council wants to consider that today. We could bring that back on the 18th as part of a overall, it's not a huge reduction in costs, but it might be a right sizing of those rebates.
Don't we have a tree bait?
A tree bait, yes.
That here?
Yep, you're right. It's not on there. Yeah, I can bring that on the 18th.
I think it's $50, huh?
Yeah.
The tree bait.
So just to give council just a quick overview then of what will happen on the 18th. These are the items that were referred by council at the October 30th committee of the whole meeting, as well as the November 4th meeting. Items that you wanted brought forward to the November 18th meeting so that you can look at these on a cumulative basis. So those are the 10 items that came out of those meetings. Then there'll be the requests that were today. And so we'll bring those forward and we'll just go through those quickly in case there's any that you don't want brought forward to the 18th. And then there was the reserve contributions and analysis around that we didn't quite finish at the last meeting. So bringing that back again on the 18th so that you can look at those in a cumulative way with all of the other requests and decisions that you have before us. So I think it might be good if you can just, I don't think we necessarily need to discuss it today, but to give me some indication if you do not want it brought forward. Otherwise, we'll bring this forward with some suggestions with respect to funding.
Right. We don't want to get into this now, folks, because we're overtaxing you already. And overtaxing, yeah, because all the property tax exemptions. So anyways, so we're actually going to just look at these, and if anybody says no, we'll stop. So Jetta, you all been here for the presentation, so Jetta, just run them through.
Okay, so this is the beach festival. They've typically had 5,000 of ongoing. This year, they've asking for an additional 2,500, which they've had the last 2 years as well. You'll see in the chart.
Okay. Carry on.
This item, though, is something that was brought forward in terms of the relocation, and it was discussed at last year's financial planning in that there was $5,000 put in the 2024 financial plan for the start of the investigation and discussions around that relocation. The parks manager has provided an estimated cost for kind of the phase one piece of this move to be approximately $150,000. And looking possibly for some cost sharing with Beach Fest itself, and maybe that's in the ballpark of $50,000. So there was discussion last year about possibly using Growing Communities Fund for this, but just wondering whether council wants this brought forward on the 18th as a decision item.
It should be brought forward, but I can also confirm that I talked to Cheryl today, and they're not 100% on that they want to relocate. But she did say that she wanted more conversation about that.
Okay.
So it should leave it on the list. It hasn't been discounted completely yet, but we have to have a conversation.
Okay,
Thank
great. Thank you for that. The dry grad, their request was $2,500.
Next.
Okay. The Mount Arrowsmith, the Brant Festival, 5,000, no change from the prior year. So this amount is actually already in the financial plan. So it would be only a matter of if you wanted to remove it. Otherwise, it's already there.
Okay.
The Oceanside Community Arts, looking for their ongoing 5,000, but plus the additional 9,300 that they said relates to accessibility items that they want to install.
Okay.
The museum. Hello. Yes?
Yeah,
Good.
you're good.
Okay. So they $5,000 already in the financial plan, so it would be a bump of $20,000 for their ask.
Okay.
The curling club, we've got some capital as well as just a request for kind of ongoing conversations. So this is one I'll have to look at what some possible funding alternatives are for this.
The only.
Also, I wanted to mention, they were alluding to the fact that it's a lease. They don't own anything. Is there any way that we would put that into, would that be for next year? Could look at that? Because that's where they're stuck. I mean, they could do capital because there could be some large things down the road. Yeah, I don't know how that works.
If I may just, I don't want to get into it too much today, but there's like, what would have to happen is a report would have to come back to council because there's a ton of complexities around the park and how we acquired the park, and they alluded to some of them, but I think we could just roll this into discussion, and then what my recommendation would be is that we have to come back to council with a more fulsome history on how we are where we are. So we have a 5-year lease that's expiring at the end of next year with that group. So I think it's good timing that we would talk in 2025 about what that continuation looks like. And the request was for that, really that staff time to talk about it, but it's a complex site because of how we got it.
Okay, Jenna, if you could go back to the Parksville District Historical Society, I want to check your numbers that are up there. Yeah, 25,000, but I asked the question from John. He says 25,000 this year and asking for 65,000 the following year.
Yeah.
So we got to make sure that that's kind of part of the ongoing. Yeah, 25,000 immediate for 25, and then 26 onward is 65,000. So just want to make sure that.
Yeah,
that's
thank you.
reflected in-
I did have a note of that,
Yeah.
so it'll
Okay,
be
thank-
important
yeah,
to,
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we all kind of follow. Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Anyway, so yes, that's good. Park for curling. Yes, thank you.
So the curling club, bring that forward with some possible funding options, and then the other piece is the conversation to continue on, and that doesn't need to be considered on the 18th. The Chamber of Commerce. So there was really kind of three options. One is to carry on with the current lease agreement, which would factor in just a CPI increase in the fee for service. Their increase, which I think there was some confusion, and we might want to clarify as to what the amount was, because like you pointed out, Mayor, the request was 120,000, and then there was confusion as to whether it should have been just another 40. And so I'm not sure what that might have been. In my quick math, was thinking the 56 there plus the $20,000 deficit plus the extra 40 got to roughly 120.
Yeah.
So I think we'll follow up before, just so that we know that we have the right amount, given the treasurer wasn't here today.
Yes, thank you.
So carry this forward, all three options. Okay. And then the Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's great, Jella. Thank you.
great. Yeah, that was the original kind of creation. So we just wanted to provide some background on that.
I'd just like to
Councilor
mention
Bill.
that I know that a previous meeting that we had here, when we were able to speak with various staff members, that Graham at that time had indicated that it would be about $2,500, for, I guess, in kind. I don't know if that included the paint, but I think it's worth keeping in mind that that's over 5 years.
Okay. Councilor Gort.
2,500.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mayor. So this is not really a question, but more of a comment for our staff. I just want to say how impressed I am with all the information that you provided to council before the meeting. And you were well prepared. I could follow everything with all the handouts that you have here. You made my life so much easier. Kudos to everybody. Like, it was job well done. Thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Like, I'm quite impressed. Thank you.
Okay, I'll leave it at.
And I too was impressed
that.
with the format of having the community groups here. That was a good move. And it was, yeah, I learned a lot, and I was appreciative for face to face. So thank you.
I think one thing, if I could comment, is those were specific invitations to groups that had received funding
Right.
previously.
Yeah.
So it wasn't kind of a wide open, you can imagine that would probably be an all-day event, or maybe even 2 days. So we'll certainly have further discussions on that with council as to how that process might look in the future, or how that might go, because part of what we had proposed to all of those was that then there's some reporting back to council about what the money actually got used for, which hasn't been done in the past. So kind of come and do your presentation for what you intend to spend it on. Council decides on the amount, and then there's some reporting out on that with financials at the end. So just trying to bring some rigor around that community funding, because again, the whole conversation around, is that a core function of the municipality to provide funding to community groups? And so we've got a bit of a flavor of how many different groups are involved and the amounts. So I think this is the start of that. I think I'll leave it at that. That's the overview. This will come back on the 18th, and we'll do it in a similar format to what we did before, in terms of, here's all the items, here's a possible property tax increase, or if there's other funding options, we'll provide those, because then they wouldn't be a property tax increase if we can use grants or other means. What I would suggest to you is that most of these community group ones are property tax funded. There aren't typically, with the exception perhaps of any capital requests, there aren't typically grants available for that type of request. So then you can look and see cumulatively what all these add up to, because all of a sudden it might be a bigger number than when you're looking at them each individually.
Looking forward to it.
Okay, any questions on that
Councillor Grant?
process?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First to comment is that I guess we also want to think about how this relates to the grant and aid program because they're kind of separate, but not in a sense. So I don't know how this all would work together in the future. So the next step here is that unless we today say no go on any of these, then staff is going to have to go do a bunch of homework on where to fund this. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, yes, although I don't think there's a bunch of homework here to do. There's a couple that will require some research, but the others are just property taxes. So it'll be just a matter of doing the math for you to say, if you want to do this, it's going to be whatever percentage of a property tax increase to do that.
Jetta brings her abacus to the next meeting.
Exactly.
And she just keeps on adding it.
Yep.
And then we say yay or nay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we want to wind up here, folks. I want to shut down at 4:30 and go into in camera if I can.
Okay.
But are you okay, Jenna? You're fine?
Oh, yep, that's
Okay,
good.
thank
And
you.
then I'll also have the BC assessment information for you on the 18th. And
Yeah,
so,
that'll be good.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jetta. Thanks, council. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that pursuant to section 91G of the Community Charter, council proceed to a closed meeting to consider an item relating to litigation or potential litigation? A mover by Councillor Gord, seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? Thank you. That is unanimous.